No point in lying, I know you are also losing your mind waiting for the Elbaph arc, because sitting 4 months with no episodes is a nightmare I would not wish on my worst enemy. So thinking exactly about you, I decided to bring you the best Egghead episodes. Straight to the point, so you can see everything that has happened so far in this insane arc. So grab your popcorn, and without any more stalling, let us get into the video. The episode starts with Egghead Island covered in darkness, but soon the sun rises, lighting the place up like Times Square on New Year's. Even little Laboon was out for a casual morning swim. In some random city, people were sprinting like it was Black Friday just to grab the newspapers falling from the sky. And the headlines? Bro, they broke the internet. First, they said Grandpa Garp vanished in Hachinosu. Then they dropped the bomb that Emperor Straw Hat Luffy took a bunch of hostages at Egghead. Back at Makino's bar in East Blue, the crowd was in denial. Nobody was buying either of those stories. While everyone was panicking, the mayor told them to chill. Garp's a living legend, and legends don't die easy. But our clown brain buddy was losing it so bad, he started cursing out Makino's baby. The baby laughed anyway when he looked at Luffy's face on the paper. The mountain bandits were stressing hard because no one ever comes back from Pirate Island. Even Dadan told them to shut up, while she tried to figure out what Luffy and Garp were up to. And yeah, she was bawling like a telenovela villain. Suddenly, birds started fleeing and the ground shook like Big Mom tripped in stilettos. It was so insane that after the quake, a tsunami rolled in like it wanted a rematch. This was labeled the biggest earthquake in recorded history. Poor Laboon almost drowned again. People screamed to run for the hills, but it was already too late. And guess who were the only folks not worried about any of it? That's right, the Celestial Dragon, chilling in their sky castles without a care in the world. This megaquake happened 6 days after the kingdom of Lulusia got Thanos snapped off the map. Navy reports said Lulusia was now just a big old hole in the sea. And you already know who's behind all this chaos. Yeah, that guy. Thanks to Imu-sama's Earthquake DLC, sea levels rose by a whole meter worldwide. On the land of three-legged ladies, the beaches disappeared overnight. Some islands sank, and sharks were casually swimming into people's living room. The fishermen, they were just happy it might be a good day to catch dinner. Priorities, man. Meanwhile, back at Egghead, a fleet of 100 Navy warships had rolled up, packed with over 30,000 troops. They were led by 9 vice admirals, with faces like they'd just bitten into a lemon, except for Doll, because she's fine as hell. And of course, the troublemaker Kizaru showed up to crash the party. Invading Egghead wasn't going to be easy, because the Sea Beast Mekas were putting in work on those clowns. That is, until Kizaru showed up and blasted a hole straight through a poor robo-giraffe's chest. Fluffy King Sentomaru yelled not to attack the Navy's own Sea Beast, but Mr. Slowpoke Brain said it wasn't his fault. They attacked first. After a solid 10 seconds of work, he went full gamer mode and slurped up a cup of chicken-flavored ramen. The island was crawling with Mark III pacifistas under Sentomaru's command. Kizaru told him to quit playing and just rejoin the Navy already, but Sentomaru said there's no mercy if they try to set foot on this island. He said Uncle Punk developed the pacifista laser tech by studying Kizaru's powers and never imagined that shiny old man would come to erase him. But Kizaru replied that digging into the Void Century is a crime. Not even he can look past that. He said he's just a puppet for the Navy and didn't want to kill his best friend. And guess whose fault it all is? The Straw Hats, of course, for stopping Rob Lucci from giving Vegapunk a buzz cut. But of course, what hit the front page was the complete opposite of what really happened. They said the Straw Hats took Dr. Vegapunk hostage and barricaded themselves inside. And that clown Saturn was loving the fake news Morgans cooked up. One of the world government's bootlickers reported that the CP0 agents and the rest of their squad got clapped by Sentomaru. And with that unbreakable barrier, nobody could go in or out of the lab. Saturn asked where the tech staff and workers of Egghead were. A Marine replied they had already evacuated, and their ships were spotted. So Saturn, being the wholesome grandpa he is, said they might know too much and ordered all their ships sunk. The soldier also mentioned Bonnie was with the Straw Hats, but Saturn couldn't care less. He said she's just a little girl and not needed anymore, so spare her. Oh, so Bonnie gets the baby girl pass, but thousands of innocent Egghead researchers gotta go Titanic? This old man's a straight-up villain. Right after that, Kizaru's men intercepted a transmission coming from inside Egghead. The Admiral whipped out his fancy Rolex Dendenmushi and tapped in. Turns out it was York calling Mary Joise, asking why the Gorosei were trying to off her too, since she was the one who snitched on Stella in the first place. But the bearded boomers weren't buying it and said she's still a Vegapunk, so she had to go. York clapped back, saying if she cared about the Void Century, she wouldn't have handed them that juicy info. The old dudes started grilling her, and she laughed like a Bond villain, saying Egghead belonged to her now. She even threatened, bragging that the Seraphim would stomp anyone who tried to get cute. Asked if they really wanted to start a war with her. Bold move, York. That's when Jupiter said they changed their mind, and asked if she could recreate the Mother Flame, aka that cute little firecracker that vaporized the kingdom of Lulusia. York started cackling, saying she knew they'd need her eventually. She told them the only power plant that can make the Mother Flame is on Egghead, so if they even scratch her or the lab, they lose the deadliest weapon on the planet. The Gorosei agreed to protect York, and even offered to make her a celestial dragon. After all that, she started crying and begged them to get her out of there ASAP, screaming that Luffy was going to end her. Did she really think she'd get away with everything she pulled? Adorable. Meanwhile, Luffy was casually munching a steak while Zoro asked what they should do with York now that she's useless, and York was screeching for someone to come wipe out those damn straw hats already. Even Nami had the Glock out, ready to pop a cap in that tin can trader's CPU. Luffy said they could just use her as a human shield to escape, and the squad was chilling so hard that Giga Sim Sanji was out there flipping pancakes for Bonnie. Robin was looking rough, but our Doc Chopper was patching her up. She'll be fine. And it was thanks to her that Vegapunk was still in one piece. The crew still couldn't believe that Soda Can York fooled every other Vegapunk on her own. Usopp said there's no way they're escaping this island. But our boy Luffy just flashed a smile like it's just another Tuesday. He grabbed the Denden Mushi and ran straight at York, saying they're using her to force their way out of here. Luffy snatched the Denden Mushi and yelled, "My name's Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm gonna be king of the pirate." He said they teamed up with Dr. Vegapunk, and if they wanted York's head to stay attached, they better pull their troops back. Meanwhile, York was bawling her eyes out, begging for someone to save her like she was in a telenovela. And the Marines were already whispering that Straw Hat Luffy might actually be as wild as the rumors say. Vivi was shocked out of her mind since she'd been defending the guy non-stop. The Gorosei started asking which agents were still alive in the lab, and just as Luffy was about to answer, Robin clapped a hand over his mouth and hung up the Denden Mushi, yelling for him to stop being a dummy. She told him not to just hand intel to the enemy like it's free sample, but in Luffy's head, that call was gonna scare the Navy into leaving. Usopp told him to stop underestimating the Marines like they're mall cops. Saturn said they only needed to protect 3 things: York, the Punk Records, aka Vegapunk's big brain, and the power plant for the Mother Flame. Anything else? Trash tier. Doesn't matter. A Marine said Rob Lucci's squad was still on site, but Saturn was already going full anime villain, mumbling that humans are like cockroaches. Even if you squash a bunch, they keep popping back up. York reminded everyone she made a deal with the Gorosei, so if they laid a finger on her, the whole island would get nuked just like Ohara. That triggered Nami, who Thor hammered York right in the dome for talking that nonsense in front of Robin. York tried to act tough, saying she'd tell the Gorosei, but Nami didn't give a single damn. Zoro told her to chill since York was unarmed, but they forgot the most dangerous weapon she had: her mouth. Robin said she was feeling way better thanks to Chopper, and the little guy looked like he was about to launch fireworks out his ears from the parade. Vegapunk thanked Robin too, since she literally saved his life from getting blown to bits by York's cannon. Chopper said Usopp helped out by holding off the Seraphim. Usopp tried to act cool, but admitted he was just looking for Zoro when he bumped into those demon kids, and still got wrecked, only to be saved by Zoro himself. Kaku told him to zip it, but the man's spine cracked like a glow stick. Rob Lucci told him to just go take a nap already. Lilith was crying louder than a baby at 3 a.m., saying Shaka, Pythagoras, and Edison were all toast. But Metalhead told her to get it together, because he was still alive and kicking. Usopp told her to shut it so he could hear what's going on in the basement. The CP0 agents were shouting thanks for the food the Straw Hats gave them. Others told them to stop screaming thank yous to the enemy out loud. Now they wanted out. Anywhere but here, because the Seraphim had them shaking in their boots. Usopp asked if they'd be okay, and Vegapunk said of course they would. He trapped the Seraphim in bubbles made from the same material as the Mark III pacifistas, strong enough to eat explosions for breakfast, and they were coated in sea stone too. Minnie Mihawk was fuming that they dared trap him in bubble wrap. Essie Snake told them to quit whining since she hadn't been ordered to vaporize anyone yet. Frankie thanked her for unpetrifying him, and Vegapunk found that weird because he never programmed her to do that. But she just got all blushy, saying it was Luffy who grabbed her and asked her to undo it for his crewmates. Jinbei cracked up, saying she was just like the real Hancock. Then Nami said the weapon Lilith gave them was clutch. She even saved Sanji by trapping S-Shark in a giant bubble. Luffy went to thank S-Snake, and she nearly had a heart attack thinking he said, "I love you." Atlas tried opening the barrier again, and yep, failed miserably. They were still stuck on that island unless someone could shut down that unbreakable wall. York started laughing in their faces, saying it was useless. She locked it with a passcode and didn't share it with the other brains. Lilith was about to go full volcano mode and knock that traitor into next week, but York just kept bragging that the world government and that code were her insurance policy. Luffy couldn't believe all that speechifying was for nothing. Usopp was like, "Told ya." Obviously, the world government was never gonna let them escape that easily. It's not called One Piece for a reason. Meanwhile, Lucci was quietly lurking in the shadow, analyzing the whole situation. 2 Vegapunk satellites down, and the Straw Hats still in one piece. Usopp asked what he was mumbling about, but Lucci claimed he was just talking to himself. Classic spy move. Then the queen herself, Stussy, showed up to say they were completely surrounded. 100 warships, 30,000 marines, and one shiny Admiral Kizaru ready to fry some pirates. Sanji ran over like a loyal golden retriever offering tea to Stussy, but the kind of tea he wanted wasn't served in a cup. Stussy told Lucci not to be mad. It was just one little bite. Honestly, I'd let her bite me too. Vegapunk asked Nami to show their escape route, so she used the log pose they set back in Wano. When the old man said it was pointing to Elbaf, Luffy and Usopp lost their damn mind. They were already packing bags in their heads, screaming, "We're going to the land of giants!" Even Edison's rusty brain couldn't process why they were so hyped. The old Vegapunk said the Sunny was parked at the Leba phase, but with the island surrounded, sailing through the port was a no-go. So plan B, use the Vega Force right next to the Sunny to dip out. The dream was to fly over the Navy ships, but the bot could only fly inside Egghead. Outside, it'd drop like a rock. Frankie said, "No worries, because the Sunny could launch itself a full kilometer." Even Einstein's ghost would have fainted after hearing that. When he heard the Sunny runs on cola, the old man's eyes sparkled like he just discovered liquid gold. So yep, that was the plan. But first, someone had to disable the island's barrier. And York, still giggling like a Disney villain, refusing to spill the code. But never underestimate a Vegapunk, my dude. The crew put their heads together and started hacking the system like a bunch of cyber pirates. Frankie wasn't gonna miss out. He told Lilith he was coming along to show her his upgraded bazooka. Luffy and Bonnie were ready too. Can't let anything stop them from hitting Elbaf. They jumped straight off the lab like maniacs with no parachute, trusting the cloud ground to break their fall. Peak Straw Hat behavior. They rushed off to move the Sunny to the island's backside, since that barrier could go down any second. Timing was everything. Lilith was beyond excited. It'd be her first time leaving Egghead. Luffy was already regretting not grabbing more food. And Bonnie? She was hangrier than ever, saying they should have packed more pizza. But Luffy said cheese was more than enough. Sanji could turn that into a 5-star pizza with his eyes closed. Bonnie was already calling him perfect, good with his fists and even better in the kitchen. Too bad she's a bit too young for the curly-browed sim. But let's be real, Sanji didn't care. Catch him on the next episode of To Catch a Cook. Rubber Boy asked why she was suddenly in such a good mood, and Bonnie said it felt like a weight had been lifted now that she's not trying to take down Vegapunk anymore. Luffy was like, "Good, now you'll stop crying like a baby every 5 minutes." Meanwhile, over on the marine ships, Rob Lucci casually dropped a call from inside Egghead like it was a group chat update. The commander told him to share the info with the rest of the fleet. Still can't figure out how nobody noticed Lucci texting from 2 feet away. Over in the VIP Villain Lounge, Grandpa Saturn was sipping his tea when Borsalino popped in. Saturn asked if he heard the news, and Kizaru said that Luffy tried bluffing his way into making it look like the Straw Hats were in control. Spoiler alert, they're not. Saturn was like, "Can't you phase through the barrier? It's made of light and you literally are light." Kizaru said sure, but the barrier's being guarded by his old buddy Sentomaru. Saturn said to just ignore the guy, but Kizaru wasn't having it. He's not about to throw hands with someone that used to share his ramen packet. Plus, if they touch Sentomaru, the Sea Beasts and 50 Mark III pacifistas would turn the entire Navy fleet into a seafood platter. Saturn then asked if Kizaru at least knew where the energy plant was, and Borsalino said Lucci already sent all the intel they needed. That's one sneaky kitty. Back on deck, every Marine soldier started suiting up like it was the Super Bowl. They called in the Rokushiki squad and prepped to bust out the CP0 agents, who honestly were living better than anyone else on that ship. The cookie-faced guy said their bullets would just tickle the pacifistas, so the sea monsters were the real target. Luffy was bouncing around on the cloud floor like it was a trampoline park, while Frankie kept yelling not to forget the mission. After all that running, they finally made it to the Sunny. Kizaru locked eyes with the Sea Beast, and Sentomaru immediately knew something was up. Cue the flashback. Sentomaru remembered everything Uncle Borsalino taught him as a kid. And just like that, the Admiral fired off a Yata no Kagami beam bouncing through Egghead like it was playing pinball. Sentomaru smiled and said, "Uncle's here," before yelling for the pacifistas to attack. Kizaru zipped in glowing like a Christmas tree, and our sumo champ squared up yelling that his defense was the strongest in the world. The clash lit up the entire island like it was the 4th of July. Everyone was panicking like, what the heck was that? And Luffy, he felt it in his rubbery bone. Someone strong had broken into the island. Kizaru and Big Mac were trading blows like it was the UFC finals, but even the Admiral's flashy light moves couldn't get past our boy's rock-solid defense. I ain't letting Uncle Shiny get through here, he shouted, launching himself into orbit. When the two clashed, the explosion of light was so intense it rattled the entire Navy. Right after that, all the Vice Admirals jumped in like it was Black Friday at Best Buy. Dahl led the charge, looking like a goddess of war, while the pacifistas were charging up their laser cannons like super soakers from hell. But the Marines launched a bunch of cannonballs to cancel their attacks, and suddenly, bam! A giant sea lion showed up and chomped a whole battleship like it was a hot dog. Then a horned sea hound headbutted another ship into wood chips. But the real MVP? This weird ratfish drill nose creature who rolled up like sup nerds and made the Marines cry for their moms. While everyone was wondering how the heck they were gonna beat these sea beast abominations, another one rolled up behind them like a horror movie jump scare just to sniff their necks. And just when things looked hopeless, Vice Admiral Peanut Head showed up and landed a Detroit smash straight to that cow monster's jaw. One of the Mark III pacifistas tried to snipe a ship, but Dahl came flying in with a high heel to the face. Honestly, if she stepped on me, I'd thank her, but it'd be a one-time blessing, because her second kick turned that poor cyborg into space junk. The other Vice Admirals weren't playing either. They were dismantling the Navy's own most powerful weapons like it was open mic night at the Roast Club. Meanwhile, Usopp was panicking harder than a raccoon in a trash can. "They're invading!" he screamed. Vegapunk was confused, like, "Bro, I left 50 pacifistas with Sentomaru. What happened?" Then they saw Kizaru's smug face on camera and flashbacked to that Sabaody trauma real quick. York was cackling in the corner like a villainess on Twitter, but Zoro shut her up with one glare like, "Keep talking and you're the next sashimi." Back outside, Sentomaru went for a Thunderslap trademark, but Kizaru casually Matrix dodged it. Vegapunk was apologizing like, "Sorry for dragging you into this," and told him he'd understand if he ran. But Edison jumped in like, "Quit whining and go find that dang barrier code already." Sentomaru didn't know where to look first when bam! Kizaru came flying in with a knee that turned him into wall art. And before the guy could even exhale, Kizaru hit him with a Yasakani no Magatama that turned the ground into Swiss cheese. Still running, Sentomaru shouted, "I'm sorry, but I promised Luffy that I would protect Vegapunk." Kizaru asked since when he was besties with pirates, but Sentomaru grabbed his axe and screamed, "Vegapunk's my savior. I'll fight anyone for him, even the Navy." He sliced through Kizaru clean in half. But oops, he's made of light. Man reassembled like a glow stick. Cue flashback. Once upon a time, Kizaru and Vegapunk were hiking when they found some bears. Except those bears had been whooped by a chubby little kid who looked like a sumo beanbag. Kizaru asked where he was from, and the kid yelled, "I hate my village. They're all wimps and I'm never going back." Translation: he got kicked out. Then the boy yelled, "I'm strong and never hungry, but I want to work to buy rice ball." And all the Marines burst out laughing like he just won America's Got Talent. But Vegapunk saw potential and offered him a job as his personal bouncer. The boy said yes, stomach growling and all. Later, he ran up to Kizaru like, "Uncle, how do I protect Grandpa Punk?" And Kizaru taught him everything he knew. While he was spacing out, Kung Fu Panda landed a solid right hook to snap him back to reality. But Kizaru said his defense is just as tough as that kid's, only to blast him in the face with a laser that floored him and leveled half the island. Yikes. Standing in the flames, Kizaru took command of the pacifistas and declared, "Your boss is unconscious. New orders, sink the Sea Beast weapons. We're Navy now." Those guys switched sides faster than you can say justice, and next thing you know, bam! They shoot the Sea Beast right in the back just before it could wreck one of the warships. The Marines were absolutely stunned, and the Sea Beasts looked even more confused, like, "Bro, we were teammates 5 minutes ago." Then a Vice Admiral ran to tell Saturn that someone hijacked the pacifistas, and when the big-nosed guy said Sentomaru had been turned into grilled bacon, everyone started panicking hard. Because if a tank like him got smoked, it means Kizaru wasn't pulling any punches. With tears in his eyes, Vegapunk shouted for them to shut down the defense system. Sentomaru's sacrifice couldn't be in vain. But of course, York was in the back giggling like a Disney villain, reminding everyone she's also a Vegapunk. So good luck with that, folks. Vegapunk calmly dropped the bomb. Kizaru's made of light. He can waltz into that lab whenever he wants. Usopp's soul nearly left his body. Meanwhile, Kizaru said he was dying to see the Straw Hats again, and headed over for a friendly reunion. But time was ticking, because the crew was already rolling out of the island with the Vega Force. Lilith was piloting like a pro while Bonnie and Luffy stuffed their faces. Can't go to war on an empty stomach, right? Suddenly, alarms started blaring and Lilith was like, "No way! This place is supposed to be Fort Knox." But Kizaru sliced through that barrier like a hot knife through a stick of butter, announcing that his job was to protect the energy plant, Punk Records York, and maybe an old friend, and destroy Dr. Vegapunk. The Straw Hats outside lost it. They were stuck out there with Kizaru. They scrambled to warn Luffy through the Dendenmushi. Meanwhile, Rob Lucci, the traitorous tiger, was sitting there like a snake in the grass, waiting for his moment. Stussy was sipping her tea in peace when, bam! Lucci went full stealth mode and tried to finger blast Vegapunk in the pancreas. Stussy took the hit like a legend and hit the floor with a dramatic flop worthy of an Oscar. Sanji immediately borrowed Nami's bubble gun and trapped Kaku like a clown at a birthday party. And then Zoro launched himself at Lucci with all the fury of a swordsman who's had one too many protein shakes, mocking his excitement over a new ally. Lucci tried to flex, saying with him and Kizaru, the Straw Hats were toast. But Zoro clapped back and slammed him so hard into the wall that they both crashed out of the lab. From the skies, Kizaru spotted the Vega Force sneaking around and finally understood why the Sunny wasn't at the port. Frankie was low-key leaking oil out of fear. But when he turned to ask Luffy what the plan was, the rubber monkey was already sprinting toward the fight with a giant grin. Before Kizaru could say, "Hi," Luffy launched a kick so fast it could have cracked the sound barrier. Borsalino called him rude, but Luffy shouted, "In the last 2 years we got 100 times stronger." Just a day ago, there were explosions going off in Mary Joy's. Soldiers were screaming that the invincible slave was back, baby. One of those pompous Tenryubito was yelling to stop that freak show already. They started firing cannonballs until they finally knocked the poor guy down. They chained up Kuma like a dog, but this dude was way too strong for the average grunts to handle. Then, of course, he started using that bear paw power that only people who've seen it know how ridiculously destructive it is. He hit them with a bear shockwave that sent everyone flying like ragdolls, and those filthy celestial dragons were ready to execute Kuma right then and there. That's when some lazy smoker strolls in, asking what the heck is going on. And guess who it was? None other than that jerk Akainu, coming to end the bear's existence. One soldier tried to get up, but one of those disgustingly arrogant guys stepped on his head, saying they were good for nothing. He yelled at Akainu that he wanted lobster for dinner last night, but didn't get any. They were all complaining that this never happened before, and wondering what kind of food shortage was going down in Marijois. These guys can't go one day without stuffing their faces with caviar and croissants like they're royalty or something. Akainu told them if they couldn't handle a dangerous guy like Kuma, there's no way they could just let him roam free. He should have lost his personality by now, so he should practically be dead. He then throws a hellhound punch that nearly melted Kuma's head off, and said, "I didn't know you still bleed like a human." But Kuma refused to go down and tried running away. But of course, Admiral Akainu wasn't having any of that, and started raining lava down on him. Just when he was about to be done for, Kuma somehow managed to teleport away to safety. Then we cut to an island on fire in the New World. Bonnie's tied up, and Akainu, that filthy jerk, says he was shaking in his boots when he heard she escaped from the government. But now she's just a helpless little doll. Bonnie started screaming that they'd pay for what they did. The walking trash can tells her she can cry all she wants, but Kuma's conscience is gone forever because he chose to become a weapon. Bonnie calls him a liar, saying her dad would never abandon her like that. After the flashback, Akainu starts getting yelled at by the Tenryubito for letting Kuma escape. And since his hands are full of lava, he might as well give those disgusting celestial dragons a little petting, huh? Back to the present in Egghead. The action's heating up. The government's pacifistas are shooting to take out the Sea Beast weapons. They wiped out all the poor fools who were on their side just a second ago. The soldiers are getting ready to invade the factory, talking about how Admiral Kizaru's already in the lab, up in the clouds. He's the one fighting Luffy, who's in his full-on gorilla mode with Gear 5 clouds surrounding him. Kizaru tries to block Luffy's right hook, but even with his defense up, he felt that punch, barely had time to block, and Luffy was already hitting him with a Gomu Gomu Black Mamba, leaving Kizaru shook. Kizaru says now he gets how the kid beat Kaido because this kid's strong, but he still wants to know why a pirate like Luffy cares so much about protecting Vegapunk. Luffy fires back, asking why the heck they want to kill the old apple guy so badly. Kizaru kicks to defend himself and says, "It's not that I want to kill him. The Yonku's already running low on power and gets a scare when he sees Kizaru almost making it to the moon. Kizaru says he's not trying to kill Vegapunk since he's known him for so long, but he'd appreciate it if he stayed out of it. In the blink of an eye, Kizaru popped up right in front of Luffy and booted the kid so far he might as well have been in a different time zone. Kizaru remembers the day Vegapunk was all hyped up, saying he built the world's biggest robot, and now the Vega Force was getting shredded to pieces by Kizaru's attack. Luffy slammed right into the robot, and it exploded against the laser barrier. Frankie and Bonnie started falling, and of course, Lilith lost control of the Vega Force. Lucky for them, the ground was made of clouds, so they didn't turn into pancake mush. Lilith realized the chair was giving off shocks and screamed for everyone to get out of there. Just as she was about to say the Vega Force was gonna blow up, boom! A freaking atomic bomb went off, sending everyone flying. She didn't know whether to be pissed or cry because their dream robot just got obliterated. Frankie was fuming, saying someone was gonna pay for this, but he ran to check on the Sunny. Bonnie warned that Mugiwara was also in trouble, but all she heard were Kizaru's footsteps sneaking up behind them. He looks at Bonnie and says, "Wow, you've grown a lot. What are they putting in today's kid's juice box?" He says she must be here for revenge, but they already ordered Dr. Vegapunk's death. Bonnie tells him to shut it because the old man's not her target anymore. She grabs a cable from the floor and tries to smash Kizaru's face in. But, of course, he dodges and says, "I'd rather not hurt familiar faces, especially ones that didn't order me to kill." Then he casually sends her flying into the damn laser barrier, making her explode on impact. Frankie's furious, yelling, "How dare you do that?" He tries to blast Kizaru with a powerful laser beam, but before he even finishes charging, the guy vanishes. Lilith's screaming to call Stella because they're in serious danger. Usopp picks up the phone and asks if everyone's okay. Then he realizes Kizaru's not there yet. Vegapunk starts celebrating because they finally cracked the code to shut down the defense system. They already told York to go screw herself, and she was furious, calling those geniuses irritating. The old man asks Sanji and Jinbei to take his bags to the ship because there's something really important there. Frankie's back to yelling that they need to get out of there now. The old man says they can disable the barrier anytime and asks if the Vega Force and the ship are in position, but Frankie says no and didn't even need to explain why. That's when Borsalino strolls in, saying, "It's a shame, but your escape plan failed." Everyone's in shock, asking how the heck he got in and what happened to Luffy. Stella asks if it was him who caused the explosion, and Kizaru says, "Unfortunately, I had to blow up that giant robot." The satellites are pissed, and Kizaru says this mission's too tough for him, so he prefers to just end it quickly. Out of nowhere, everything starts shaking, and they think there's an earthquake. But wait, that's hard to believe when they're literally standing on clouds, right? They ask, "What now?" And you won't believe it. Luffy's over there all twisted up, saying it's super hot in this barrier. Then, boom! He activates Gear 5 and starts cracking up, saying, "I'm back!" Kizaru can't even believe what he's hearing, and Luffy starts hopping from tree to tree like Tarzan, rushing straight to the lab. Everyone's losing it, and the Vegapunks are jaw-dropped when they see a giant hand snatching Kizaru up. Everyone's eyes go wide like they did when they saw Gear 5 for the first time in Wano. Even Brook, who doesn't even have eye. And there's Luffy with the biggest grin saying, "That punch was pretty strong." He thanks Kizaru for beating him up. He says he crashed into the barrier twice and thought he was going to get shredded into bits. And the episode ends with the big robot Emeth waking up from its 200-year beauty sleep. Little Kuma remembers when he fell flat on his face chasing a bird, and after his dad begged to free his wife and son because he's the only one with buccaneer blood, after a few whippings for stopping work to scratch his butt, and finally, his dad turning into a human jerky. He wakes up with Ivankov saving him from being captured by the other slaves. The human hunt had begun, and everyone was running for their lives. The Celestial Dragons earned points for killing rabbits, and the winners got sweet prizes. Garling tells the kids to learn from the master and shows them how it's done. But the others are like, "We're not letting you take all the credit," and they start shooting at everyone in sight. The fugitives couldn't believe they were being treated like toys. Ivankov says they're going to carry out this operation, no matter the cost. But up on the cliff, they were being watched by none other than Saturn the Idiot. At the Navy HQ, a soldier asks Garp to head to God Valley. But Garp's like, "I'm not joining this little celestial dragon excursion." He tells them not to poke the hornet's nest. He says this because while the slaves were being hunted, he was chilling in paradise with some hotties playing volleyball. But as soon as he hears Roger's name, Garp drops everything and bolts to God Valley. The Rock's pirates set sail from Hachinosu, and some weaklings think they can go after them like they're actually gonna do something. Back at the Celestial Dragon's little fun and games, Kuma gets shot with an arrow to stay sharp. But they keep running for their lives. They look at the sea and the island is surrounded by Navy ships. The same Navy that should be helping them, not hunting them, right? But Ivankov says all this cruelty is going to be erased from history, a murder game to wipe out the island's inhabitants and take everything they have. In 3 weeks, each of the 100,000 rabbit fugitives will just be a statistic. And all they can think is that this is hell on earth. A guy says if they can survive 3 weeks, they'll be free. But of course, that's not going to happen. They just say they'll let the survivors go to keep hope alive, since it's no fun killing people who've already lost the will to live. On the other side of the island, Garling had already racked up 100,000 points, because he was hunting the rabbits worth the most points, and the celestial baddies were already falling for him. The kids used a shark fish man to break the shackles with his powerful jaw. Ginny was confused because she'd sent out a bunch of info, but neither the Navy nor the pirates had made a move yet. When they asked what she was doing, she just grinned and said, "I'm manipulating info." Since the prizes for this competition are a devil fruit that turns the eater into a mythical blue dragon, and I swear I've seen that lizard somewhere. The other prize is the pawpaw fruit, which lets the user send themselves and others to distant islands. So if one of them eats one of these fruits, they can escape this hellhole. To make it happen, 2 weeks ago, Ginny leaked info about this island to the outside world. So any minute now, a bunch of pirates should be showing up looking for these treasures. But that wasn't enough. One of them had to draw the celestial dragon's attention to make the plan work. And while everyone was in shock, Kuma said he could be the bait, since he's big and can last longer than the others. And he says he'd rather not see anyone else die. Ivankov was already hyped, yelling that no one was going to lay a finger on Kuma. They were all going to escape God Valley together. Out of nowhere, one of the Navy ships gets blown to pieces by the Rock's pirates, who had just pulled up ready to snatch those legendary treasures. And right behind them, a whole parade of pirate crews was on the way to crash this little rich people hunting party. Rocks shouted at the Navy that resistance was useless and ordered his pirates to follow him. And this was not your average crew. This was a Hall of Fame lineup, starting with Whitebeard, asking since when he became someone's subordinate. On his shoulder was little Miss Stussy, being called pathetic by none other than Gloriosa, the original savage from Amazon Lily. Right behind them was Golden Lion Shiki yelling that the treasure belongs to whoever gets there first. But Big Mom, greedy as always, said she wanted both of them. Classic Linlin, still on that all-you-can-eat mindset. Kaido said the devil fruits would be useless to her anyway, since she already had heard. And last but not least, Captain John. Yep, that Captain John. The one who hid the treasure buggy's been chasing for 30 years. Now that's one wild team. You think they could throw hands with the Straw Hats? The Celestial Dragons were already losing it over the Rock's pirates showing up, screaming that if anything happens to them, the Navy is toast. At Marine HQ, someone asked how the pirates even found out, since this event was supposed to be top secret. But while they were freaking out, guess who pulled up next? The Roger Pirates. Roger himself rolled up with Rayleigh and Gabon, ready to make the Celestial Bastards regret ever being born. Garling barked orders to gather the troops and protect the dragons, and the other Holy Knights were roasting the Navy, calling them a bunch of useless clowns. There were legendary pirates everywhere, and the kids had to grab the treasures before someone else did. One soldier said with Rox and Roger both there, they would not last long, but backup had just arrived. Garp came in yelling, demanding to know where that damn Roger was. The Navy celebrated like their Uber Eats order just showed up. Celestial Dragons were scrambling for cover while two little punks were cleaning out the treasure stash. They snagged both devil fruits, and Kuma didn't even know he had to eat them. But of course, happiness never lasts long for broke folks, and Big Mom dropped in like a Macy's parade balloon, holding Ivankov by the neck. She shouted that she almost lost the fruits to those brats. She tried grabbing the other one too, but the air fryer-headed legend grabbed her leg and yelled at Kuma to just eat the damn thing already. The big guy dashed off, and Linlin yeeted Ivankov into a wall. Ivankov shouted that if even one of them survived, they'd win. So Kuma swallowed the fruit in one big bite. But the second he looked back, boom! Saturn hit him with the meanest drive-by slap of the century, telling the Buccaneer his destiny was to be a slave and die. But Kuma said it was strange how people like Saturn were born to be important, while people like him were born to be shackled. And he said if he had any power like Nika, he'd use it to save as many broken souls as he could. Saturn replied, that's exactly why people like Kuma had to be wiped out. While Rox and Roger were clashing for the treasures, the whole incident was fading into history's shadow, like it never even happened. Sometime later, back in the Sorbet Kingdom, Ivankov asked, is that all they're going to tell about Garp's heroic deeds? And said that so-called journalist Morgan's was trash. Nobody had a clue what actually happened on that island after they escaped. Ivankov asked how long Kuma was going to keep praying, and he said he couldn't stop thinking about all the people he could have saved. But Big Head told him to stop blaming himself, because in the middle of that nightmare, he saved over 500 lives. Ginny added that all those people cried out of pure gratitude. They said his hands were the hands of liberation, and Kuma remembered his father's words, "The warrior of liberation will come." After everything, Ivankov decides to set sail and enjoy his freedom, and Kuma says he'll never forget his face. Well, with that Funko Pop head of his, hard to forget, right? Ginny says she'll stay here with Kuma until they figure out what to do. I won't even tell you what they're up to. She says now that she's 4 years older, she has to take care of Kuma. Tried chopping some wood but nearly broke her back. Then the little guy showed up to do the hard work. And after chopping everything, they were gonna sell it. No more picking through trash and stealing. Now they're gonna make some real money and eat like actual humans. After selling everything, they were starving. And then some cowboy shows up saying he doesn't know these two. They start throwing rocks at Kuma, calling him a monster and a liar for saying he's only 9 years old. But Ginny went full savage and tried to beat those little jerks up. Kuma, being the idiot he is, went to help them and took all their pain away. And as you know, he can't just send the pain away, so he took all of it onto himself. Then the little punks made a fan club for him. At night, they finally ate a real meal after years. And since Ginny eats like a dragon, Kuma would have to work twice as hard to buy food. She asks how old Kuma was when he became a slave. And when he says he was 4, she happily says, "Same as me." But deep down, she was crying like crazy, happy to finally be free. And Kuma was crying like a newborn, telling her to stop crying. 8 years after the God Valley incident, Kuma was now a pastor at the church, where he helped the old folks of the town, taking away all their back pain and fixing those messed up knees. The old folks were so impressed they'd line up just to be helped. One grandma says she's been going to this church since his father was the boss. She was shocked when they all disappeared out of nowhere, but she was happy that he came back. And she's sure his parents are smiling somewhere, knowing their son turned into a good pastor. Little did they know, Kuma's parents had already turned into statistics for the Celestial Dragons. The old folks couldn't stop thanking Kuma's miraculous hands and asked if he could do this during the week as well. But Ginny came in, stomping her feet, shouting that he only does it on Saturdays. She said these lazy old folks don't even pay for this and are asking for more, and told them this wasn't a hospital, so they should just leave. But the old folks cracked up. The Japanese girl said she had a dirty mouth but was so beautiful. And oh yeah, beautiful is an understatement. As for the daughter, we can't say much because she's underage. The mom, my friend, she is very hot. They said the men of the town kept asking her out, but she rejected them all because she already had Kuma. She turned as red as a tomato and told them to get out. Later, an old woman said she'd pay Kuma the most she could if she could. But it's tough to survive with the Celestial Dragon's taxes. And now, they have a new, terrifying king. King Bikori, known for being cold and heartless. So if they get sick, they can't even pay the celestial tribute. They heard about a man who got locked up and starved to death. The king doesn't give food to prisoners and still kisses the Celestial Dragon's boots. Yeah, he's a real piece of work. With this, the poor old folks are basically dead, unless they stay healthy. Ginny was holding back. But Kuma said if it's a light pain or discomfort, he could heal them every week. The asylum fugitives had no money to give, but made a carrot cake for them, and it was delicious. That night, Ginny was shaking like a leaf, while Kuma was facing a massive ball of pain. That pain was everything he took from those lazy old folks. And just like Zoro took Luffy's pain, he jumped right into it. It was so much pain the church was about to explode. He had to take it all, or else it would go back to the old folk. After absorbing it all, he was just a wreck, and Ginny couldn't stand seeing him go through this every week. Imagine now that the old folks wanted to come every day. She asks how he handles it, saying they don't even know how much he's suffering. But Kuma says it's the only way to end everyone's pain. Because if the pain doesn't go to someone else, it'll come back to the people. But the most important thing is that he's happy seeing everyone happy. He said he was going to train to get stronger, but Ginny said that wasn't the problem. But she was super happy when Kuma said the old folks gave them food. On the first bite of the ham sandwich, she was in heaven. Kuma asks if she wants to go somewhere with him tomorrow. They plan a BBQ by the river. 5 years later, everything's chill. Ginny looks like a Disney princess, and Kuma looks like an Electrolux fridge with 2 doors and ice coming out of it. While they're having coffee, Ginny looks at a rainbow and says, "Let's get married." The boy turns all red while she's throwing hearts everywhere. But Kuma gives her the cold shoulder and she's like, "What the heck? I know you love me too, and I promise I'll make you happy." He says, "I know that." But he remembers that his mom was taken out just for marrying a buccaneer, and he doesn't want the same to happen to her. He tries to change the subject by saying he saw news about the Revolutionary Army. He says their leader Dragon is a cool guy, and says one day he wants to go to the sea and dedicate his life to saving people too, just like Nika, the warrior of liberation. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and Kuma thinks it's someone wanting treatment at the crack of dawn. But it's three old dudes with a basket of fish they just caught. They give it to them as a gift, and Ginny throws a basin at Kuma's pot. The guys laugh, saying she's mad at him, but she's almost crying because Kuma doesn't want to marry her. 3 years later, a major incident shook the Sorbet Kingdom. All the elders were being arrested, and out of nowhere, Kuma appeared, demanding to know what was going on. He ordered the release of everyone, but the scoundrels drew their swords, questioning if he dared to challenge the royal army. The old folks couldn't move or speak without risking their lives. They asked if the young pastor hadn't heard about the new law allowing them to exploit people from the south at will. Kuma, recalling his own and his parents' experiences, questioned if they were being enslaved again. With blood boiling, the guards claimed it was the king's will, and that the southern folks would work until death. Kuma unleashed a paw-shaped blast, slamming one of the scoundrels into the wall. He followed with a flurry of paw attacks, taking down the rest without harming any civilian. The elders fled, and the guards decided that mere enslavement wasn't enough. They needed to eliminate them. Kuma then created a massive paw covering half the city, declaring he wouldn't allow it, and launched it to obliterate the king's lackey. Ironically, this played into the wicked king's hand. He believed the elderly were a burden, unable to pay taxes, and that removing them would enrich the kingdom. Meanwhile, Kuma was imprisoned and questioned why Ginny and the others were also detained. She laughed, saying she wouldn't let him fight alone, though they admitted they got beaten badly. Kuma, frustrated, slammed the ground, questioning how they could enslave others just for living in the South, highlighting the kingdom's discrimination against the poor. Ginny remarked that the king was merely a puppet of the celestial dragon, and rebelling against the country meant facing the world government. Suddenly, the kingdom was attacked by armed soldiers. They rushed to warn the king, but it was too late. The attackers were already threatening him. A large-headed man appeared, vowing not to let the scoundrel escape. Thanks to the Revolutionary Army, the Sorbet Kingdom narrowly avoided enslavement. The citizens celebrated, and Dragon noted the chaos Kuma had caused. They opened the cell door, and the Funko Pop-headed man mentioned hearing about Kuma and Ginny's imprisonment, prompting their rescue mission. Both were stunned to see Ivankov, and even more so upon recognizing Dragon, the Revolutionary Army's leader. The balloon-headed man invited Kuma to join them in changing the world. Kuma was overjoyed, and Ginny agreed to join as well. Thus, the freedom fighters, channeling the people's anger against the government, took up arms in response to the Ohara tragedy, forming the renowned Revolutionary Army. Dragon mentioned their lack of funds, but planned to train willing recruits to fight. Kuma inquired about his combat skill, and Luffy's absentee father revealed his past in the Navy, which he left due to its lack of justice. They pledged to follow him to the end, and Dragon assured them they wouldn't regret it. Later, Kuma returned to the church to bid farewell to the elders, promising occasional visits. Time passed, and Ginny became the Eastern Forces captain of the Revolutionary Army. She joyfully sang Kuma's name, excited to reunite with his group the next day. The others envied her, as all their crushes were smitten with Kuma. Ginny told them to get real, as she was out of their league. That same day, a mysterious man appeared, and Dragon received a desperate call from a soldier reporting Ginny's abduction, caught off guard by the enemy. Upon hearing this, Kuma nearly had a heart attack, struggling to believe it. At the Revolutionary Army's secret base, the soldiers were begging the main battalion for help. Their men were getting wiped out one by one, but Ivankov said they couldn't go because they were busy transporting injured people from Goa. Then Kuma shows up saying he's going, but Balloonhead didn't want to let him go because the big bear was still a bit too wild after what happened to Ginny. Kuma wasn't having any of it though, and instantly teleported to the battlefield. He landed like a meteor, eyes full of rage, remembering when he found out Ginny was kidnapped by a celestial dragon. She was taken on a government ship to become one of those filthy creatures' wives. Kuma started throwing punches left and right, sending people flying. He used a powerful Ursa shock that sent half the city flying into the air, and with just him, he won the battle. Of course, the soldiers were celebrating, thinking the 3-year war was finally over, all thanks to the Revolutionary Army. But Kuma couldn't stop thinking about Ginny's army, completely wiped out in a surprise attack. He called Dragon, saying he was going to grab a boat and head back. 2 years later, we see a woman with pink hair on a ship with a crying child. But the girl started laughing when she touched the blue stones on her mother's face. Calling the girl Bonnie, she says they finally made it. Ivankov rushes to tell Kuma that they just got a call from Ginny. They were both over the moon hearing each other's voices. She says she made it back, and they almost set off fireworks in their ears. But then she says she's sick and was discarded by the celestial dragon. Kuma didn't get it and asked where she was, but she told him she just called to say goodbye because she wouldn't last much longer. He collapsed after hearing that, and she thanked him for all his kindness, but begged him not to come see her again. No one knew what was happening, and Kuma ran out of there, shouting that there's only one place she could come back to. Ginny told Dragon and Ivankov to take care of Kuma because he's too kind. She told Kuma she would love him forever. At that moment, Kuma was flying faster than Super straight to their church. He barged in, asking where Ginny was, but only found her lying on the ground. He asked what happened to her, and an old woman said she came back covered in crystals. She said if Ginny was exposed to sunlight, her skin would turn blue and hard as stone. Kuma broke down crying, remembering all the moments he had with her, especially when she asked him to marry her. But while he was crying, he noticed there was also a baby crying on the ground. The villagers explained that in order to make sure her baby could live, Ginny crossed the seas full of sunlight to get here while she was still alive. Kuma promised Ginny not to worry because he would take care of her baby. That's how he became Bonnie's adoptive father, who turns out was the blood daughter of a filthy Tenryubito. After burying Ginny, he went back to living at the church. He tried feeding Bonnie with a bottle, but the old woman yelled at him for doing it wrong. She said he was going to drown the girl with his big hands. They also told him to put her to sleep in a metal cage so he wouldn't crush her with his giant body. After many tries, he finally got the bottle thing right. Then the elders started joking that Bonnie would grow up to be as hungry as Ginny. It did not take long for her to start walking and calling Kuma Daddy. And of course, the big guy cried like a baby out of pure joy. Time passed, and little Bonnie kept growing fast, eating like a construction worker and staying with the neighbors while Kuma had to head off to war again. But he always came back to keep his promise of protecting little Bonnie. He fought side by side with the Revolutionary Army and even helped train little Sabo. But one day, he came back home and saw Bonnie with the same crystal on her face as her mother. Kuma immediately boarded up all the windows, and the neighbors were like, "What are you doing, man?" He told them to shut the door and revealed the gemstone growing on Bonnie's cheek. They were about to say it was the same disease that killed Ginny, but he yelled for them to shut it, so they ran to get a doctor. But that fool did not believe sunlight made it worse and tried to take the poor girl outside to test it. Then they called another doctor who said it was not lead syndrome. She was sorry, but she had never seen anything like it. Kuma told Bonnie not to worry, that everything was going to be fine. A few days later, Ivankov was freaking out because Kuma was leaving the Revolutionary Army. And even worse, Bonnie had the same sickness as her mom. Kuma said he needed to be with her, so Dragon told him he understood, and to go live his life with no regrets. He said they would start asking doctors all over the world if there was any kind of cure. Years passed, and Bonnie turned 5, and she was already wreaking havoc on the neighborhood boys. But they were calling her a vampire and hanging outside the church since she could not step into the sunlight. One of them got drop-kicked straight to the Shadow Realm for getting too bold. Kuma rushed in, begging her to be careful. Just seeing her near the door gave him a panic attack. She called him a scaredy cat, but said she did not want to see him sad. She was super upset because those bratty boys were making fun of her face gems again. She asked if she looked weird, but it was a disease, and there was nothing she could do. That is when Kuma appeared next to her and said her crystals looked beautiful, and he was sure those boys were just jealous they did not have any. Bonnie lit up right away. Kuma asked where she wanted to go once she got better. She said she wanted to visit Skypiea, but Kuma did not even know Sky Islands were a thing. She said the Sky Island is close to the sun, so maybe they would meet Nika up there. Kuma instantly started dancing like a lunatic, doing the Nika dance, and Bonnie ran up and started dancing with him. The big bear said it was going to be a blast when she turned 20 and they would go there together. And when she was 19, she said she wanted to visit Fishman Island. That night, the doctor told Kuma her illness was called sapphire scales, and he said if she was exposed to sunlight or moonlight, the crystals would keep spreading. But even if she avoided light, the disease would still grow. Kuma was in shock. He asked if there was no cure at all, saying Bonnie had to survive no matter what. The doctor told him the hard truth. Bonnie only had 5 years left to live. She would not even make it to her 10th birthday. There was still no cure for that illness. Kuma walked home in a daze, thinking this could not be real. She was growing up strong and happy. He could not accept there was no way to fix this. But when he got home, Bonnie jumped out and scared the life out of it. He told her she should be sleeping, but she said she heard something about 10 years. Kuma could not tell her the truth, so he said she would be cured by the time she turned 10. She got all excited and asked if they would travel together when she turned 10. He said of course they would. Another year passed, and the nightmare returned to Sorbet Kingdom. The elders ran to the church yelling that King Bikori was back, After 16 years, that demon had returned to haunt the kingdom again. He was threatening to burn alive everyone who was dragging the kingdom down, and that monster had already started slicing up civilians like it was not already bad enough. The village is literally on fire. Kuma's running around, saving everyone who couldn't escape the flames. The villagers are screaming, cursing the king, saying they'll never forgive him for what he did. Kuma spots a kid crying because her mom didn't make it out. Without thinking, he charges right back into the fire to get her. Meanwhile, that scumbag Bakori is talking about cleansing the city like he's some hero. Yeah, sure. Then one of his guards runs up to warn him about some angry protesters at the castle gate, shouting that they're murderers and demanding they put out the fire. What does Bakori do? Orders his guards to shoot 4 or 5 of them as an example, saying, "Anyone who dares challenge me gets the same treatment." Just as things are about to get worse, Kuma shows up, furious, and takes down the guards in seconds, causing explosions everywhere. Back at the church, people are tending to the wounded, while Bonnie waits for her dad to come back. They tell her to stay inside because of the moonlight, but she's more worried about her dad than herself. Is dad going to be okay? She wonders, but she's more concerned about the people at the castle. Kuma had already taken out all the royal guards, and the cowardly king was trying to bribe him, saying he'd give him the area he burned down, and that he cleaned up all the trash. Big mistake. Kuma remembers the time he came back carrying the girl's mom in his arms after she was roasted alive in the fire. The king tries to act tough, shooting Kuma 12 times in the chest. The problem? Kuma's body is tougher than any tank, and he doesn't even flinch. He smashes the gun with his bare hands, while the king is screaming, threatening that there will be consequences for attacking him. But Kuma's done with talking. All that anger he's been holding in, he uses it to prepare to blow the king and his entire palace sky high. This moment is remembered as the Lone Revolution of the Sorbet Kingdom. Back in Mariajois, the Gorosei are trying to figure out who took down the king of Sorbet. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, the people are celebrating and chanting Kuma's name. He's the new king of Sorbet, living in the church like a legend. Then something bizarre happens. A girl is training and people freak out because she looks exactly like Ginny. She asks why they're so surprised and says she's going to travel with her dad when she turns 10. But then, when she looks in the mirror, she freaks out and turns back into a little kid. People are like, what kind of transformation was that? Even Bonnie doesn't know. Kuma nearly faints from all the emotions. Someone suggests it's the age fruit, so they ask her to try it again, but she can't. That's when they find an old lady passed out on the ground. 2 goofballs mistake her for Bonnie. The old lady's talking to a guy who wants to speak with the king. This guy? Bulldog, the former king of Sorbet, helping Kuma run the country. And that old lady? Her mom, who somehow hasn't kicked the bucket yet. But guess what? Kuma can't catch a break. The papers are saying he set fire to a village and took the throne by force. Of course, they blame Bakori because he's got the government's backing. They're saying he'll come back to reclaim the throne. Bulldog hears about the Navy ships coming to Sorbet, and the old folks are panicking, saying they don't want to live through that nightmare again. Kuma's like, if he comes back, I'll take down his forces and whatever else he sends. But if he does, he'll become a criminal and have to leave the country. He tells Bulldog to take over the throne if that happens, and promises to protect Bonnie because the church will be in danger. Kuma tells Bonnie to behave, and he'll be back as soon as he can. But he messes up and says this to the wrong person, the real old lady, not the fake one. She hugs him, saying she doesn't want him to leave. But hey, with great power comes great responsibility. So, after all that, Kuma goes solo to defend the kingdom. He shows up like, y'all got some serious guts coming back here, and he's about to square up with not 1, not 2, but 3 ginormous Navy warships. Bakori's over there screaming, "That's the criminal tyrant who stole my throne! Take him down!" But Kuma blasts off like Buzz Lightyear with rage in his eyes and nuclear energy in his fists, and sinks all the ships in one single move like it's a pirate version of bowling night. After that, he dipped out to sea and officially became a wanted man. Bonnie was missing him like crazy, and the old lady told her that Kuma was a hero. But the little rebel yells that when she turns 10 and gets better, she's gonna be a pirate too, because you know, she can age herself up and all. Meanwhile, Kuma's out there traveling the world, hunting for a cure for Bonnie. He asks around if anyone knows a disease that makes sunlight dangerous, but no one's even heard of that nonsense. Some clowns even try to capture him for the bounty, but end up face down in the dirt wondering what went wrong. Still, Kuma keeps going, thinking about how Bonnie only has 5 years left max. She might not even make it to 10. One day, while out at sea, he crosses paths with the Revolutionary Army. They ask what he's doing out there, so they sit down for a drink. Kuma chilling with Bello Betty on his shoulder like it's casual Tuesday. Dragon says Ivankov and Inazuma got locked up, and jokes about how Kuma went from revolutionary to tyrant king to pirate real quick. Of course, no one there's buying the government's fairy tale. Betty asks Kuma what he thinks about her becoming the Eastern Force captain. the spot Ginny used to hold, and she wants to honor her name. Kuma gives the nod, and she lights up like a kid on Christmas. The absentee dad says Sabo, Koala, and the crew all want to see him too. Kuma would love to rejoin them, but he just can't. Not yet. Dragon says he has a lead on Bonnie's condition. He asks Kuma if he's heard of Dr. Vegapunk and says after a recent incident, the doc is relocating to a new lab. Normally, the guy's impossible to reach, but now security is weak. Kuma asks if Vegapunk could possibly cure Bonnie, and Dragon's like, it's a shot. So Kuma thanks him, saying he was about to give up hope. But now, he's fired up again. If Bonnie gets better, he promises to fight alongside them once more. Dragon tells him to let the winds of fate guide the way. Then, Kuma heads back to the Sorbet Kingdom and finds Bonnie beating up some poor guard. She says she trains every day because she's ready to hit the high seas. Kuma tells her the time has come. He packs her in a barrel and smuggles her all the way to Vegapunk's lab. The old man takes one look at Kuma and nearly drops dead. He says he's never seen anything like him. Though with that giant dome of a head, he might have actually been taller than Kuma if you count the cranium. Bonnie pops out the barrel and goes, "Dang, you really got a massive head." Vegapunk examines her and says, "Kuma's done a great job slowing down the sapphire scale disease." Then he says there might be a way to cure her, and Kuma almost has a heart attack on the spot. They celebrate like they just won the lottery. Vegapunk says he'll use a tech that even top doctors don't know yet. Stem cell magic, basically. But it'll take a truckload of time and money, almost like building a cyborg from scratch. Then, after running tests, the doc nearly loses his dentures when he finds out Kuma's a buccaneer, and those guys are wanted by the world government. Kuma says he trusts Dragon and asks what's different about his blood. Vegapunk says he doesn't have enough samples to figure it out yet, but he wants to use Kuma's DNA to create an army of invincible clone soldiers. So he offers a deal. Donate your blood and give me permission to clone you, and I'll waive all the costs for Bonnie's treatment. Kuma's like, of course I'll do it, but I need to know what you're gonna do with those clones. Vegapunk explains they'll be soldiers for the Navy, loaded with lasers, missiles, and enough firepower to turn pirates into toast. Kuma says, if one of those clones saves even a single life, then my life was worth it. Vegapunk says Dragon's gonna flip when he hears about this, but Kuma replies, if it saves Bonnie, I'd make a deal with the devil himself. And this man used to be a pastor, by the way. The doc calls him a saint, but Kuma says he's just a pacifist who wants peace. Vegapunk likes that so much, he decides to name the future warriors after it, Pacifistas. Meanwhile, that snake Saturn is over there saying clone soldiers are just weapons, and Vegapunk is wasting their potential. So he comes up with an idea so evil, it might just ruin Kuma's entire life. Out by the coast of Lab 8, none other than Borsalino Kizaru shows up, talking about how cold it is out here, way different from the microwave setting that is Punk Hazard. Vegapunk's all excited like, this is where I'll rebuild the future of humanity. But Kizaru's like, bro, you've been here forever and still get lost walking to the bathroom, and shows him a Den Den Mushi screen revealing that the world government's been spying on him the whole time. Vegapunk asks what he's doing here, and the Admiral drops the bomb that every convo in this place has been recorded. And chatting in secret with pirates? Yeah, not exactly good for your health. Vegapunk groans and says he hates when Kizaru does this. But Kizaru just shrugs, I'm just doing my job. And he didn't come alone. There's a whole army camped outside, including X-Drake. Then that fossil Saturn calls in and says that while Kuma might be the perfect base for clone soldiers, he's still a pirate with a bounty of 296 million berries. Not exactly poster boy material. Vegapunk argues that if the project works, it could save tons of lives. Saturn's like, sure. If it works, our power levels go Super Saiyan. But then he drops the fine print. First condition, Kuma has to become one of the 7 warlords. Apparently, some rookie named Ace just knocked out one of the current Sea Lords. Yup, that's our donut boy. Second condition, Kuma's gotta let them turn him into a full-on human weapon. We're talking total body makeover, cyborg edition. But then comes the nuclear bomb of conditions. Since Kuma used to roll with the Revolutionary Army, they can't risk him turning that new power against the government. So, third condition, he's gotta give up his free will. Yup. No more thoughts, no more decisions, just a big robotic golden retriever for the Marines. Vegapunk is beyond horrified. He's like, that's not surgery, that's execution. He asks if they really want him to turn this man into a killer machine, and Saturn calmly replies that scientists don't get to argue, they just follow orders. And those are the 3 lovely options if you want to save a criminal's daughter. And while all this shady business is going down, Bonnie's happily skipping through the lab thinking she's about to be cured. Vegapunk's whispering to himself that this ain't science, it's cold-blooded murder, but there's no way out. Refuse, and that army outside is coming in hot for Kuma. So Kuma says, do it. He knew Saturn would ask for something insane to save Bonnie. But if all it takes is his life, he'll gladly trade it for hers. Even Kizaru and the old doc can't hold back the field. Meanwhile, Bonnie is trolling a giant guard, slipping between his legs like it's a game. Saturn asks how long the surgery and full treatment will take. Vegapunk says curing the sapphire scale disease will take 6 months. Then she needs another year before she can go out into the sunlight again. So, about a year and a half. As for Kuma's mods, those will take 2 years at least. Kuma breathes a sigh of relief. Bonnie will be okay before she hits 10. But Saturn quickly reminds him, your daughter is a hostage. Once she's healed, your leash gets cut. Which means the world government takes full custody of Bonnie. And she only goes free when Kuma gives up his free will. But that also means Kuma will never get to see her again once she recovers. Of course, Saturn couldn't care less about Kuma's request. He basically told him that once the surgeries on Bonnie are done, Kuma's banned from contacting her or even looking at her. And if he breaks that rule, the girl gets turned into a slave. Kuma, now totally freaking out, says he'll never see her again. He's got one request. He doesn't want Bonnie to know the truth about her condition or the fact that she's a hostage. So after the surgery, instead of locking her in some government facility, he asks that she be allowed to rest in the Kingdom of Sorbet's church where she grew up. And then finally, the despicable Saturn does a half-decent thing for one. He says if she's being monitored, she can stay anywhere. Kuma leaves the lab and heads straight for Bonnie. Sentomaru tries talking to Kizaru but gets ignored like a text from your mom. Kuma tells him they'll be staying here for the next 6 months, and Bonnie is all hyped that he'll be staying too. And the Father of the Year asks Sentomaru to look after little Bonnie, please. Meanwhile, Vegapunk's been grinding non-stop, working on his dream weapon. He's looking for someone to help him write down his genius ideas. Basically, someone who eats and poops for him. All he wants is 5 more versions of himself to help. And so, the Vegapunk satellites were born. Funny how the one who would betray them turned out to be the one who only had to eat and poop. Bonnie's already getting ready for surgery. Afterwards, she's bothering the cute cake to play with her. And with that puppy dog face, he had no choice but to say yes. Meanwhile, Kuma's enduring all the pain of becoming a cyborg. Every time he finished, he'd find Bonnie riding Sentomaru like a horse. He wanted in on the fun, but one glare from the fatso was enough to snap him back to reality. Bonnie's all dirty, drawing something for Kuma, and he promises to cherish it forever. Vegapunk's over there, cracking up watching these two together. Bonnie's made friends with everyone at the lab. She left her exam room starving, but caught a whiff of something and bolted straight to the kitchen. What did she find? Kuma and Sentomaru making a delicious-looking mozzarella and pepperoni pizza. Even Kizaru showed up to join the feast. Kuma and Bonnie started doing the Nika dance, and Vegapunk jumped in like it was a party. Sentomaru wasn't having any of this nonsense, but was forced to join the dance by Uncle Borsalino, and they all had a blast dancing and shaking it. 6 months later, Vegapunk says Bonnie is doing great. Just 1 more year, and she'll be completely healed. She asks if she can still visit him once she's better, and the old man's practically glowing, saying, "Of course you can." She's chilling in a barrel, saying she really wants to see and Kuma tells her, "You'll see it soon enough." They head back to Kingdom Sorbet, and the people there welcome them with open arms. Bonnie says in a year, she'll be healed and able to leave the house. And somehow, Old Lady Connie is still alive, saying they'll take great care of Bonnie. Kuma tells her that he's now a pirate and won't be back for at least a year. But don't worry, he'll send her lots of letters. Bonnie says she wants to travel with her daddy after that, and he'll take her anywhere in the world. At least, that's what he wants. Since after this, he won't be able to see the poor girl ever again. An agent from CP8, named Alpha, says she'll take good care of Bonnie. She'll stay with her until she's fully healed per the medical orders. Honestly, I think I need to get sick if that means I get an agent like her. She says it's a pleasure to meet Bonnie, but her face is so intimidating it's scaring the poor child. And they're even building a base next to the church to keep an eye on her. The shady character looks at Kuma and says, "A kid's neck cracks real easy, you know?" Kuma just looks back and says, "I know that, and I'm never coming back to see her again." He went to Bonnie, thanked her for being born, and said goodbye, telling everyone not to worry about her. But deep down, he could barely hold back the tears, knowing he'd never see his little girl again. Even though people were calling him a tyrant, Kuma was as obedient as a golden retriever, and soon became one of the 7 Shichibukai. Pirates from all over the world heard the news. Even Doflamingo like, "Great, another big shot joins the club." Crocodile and Robin were gearing up to pull off their plan to steal the entire reign of Alabasta. Mihawk was out there exploding ships. Alvita said he was as big as Whitebeard and asked Kobe, "Who's stronger, me or him?" And, of course, the kid answered, "She's the strongest in the world." Ace was cracking up, telling Jinbei they found a replacement, but he was like, it wouldn't be a problem if Ace hadn't taken down Hanafuda. You know, Ulti's dad, and even that bum Teach was in the crew back then. In the land of women, Hancock couldn't care less about this. She wasn't even thinking of heading to the center. But Gloriosa was like, even so, the Serpent Princess needs to know about these things. In Thriller Bark, Gecko Moria was cracking jokes about the paw fruit of the new Shichibukai. Meanwhile, the revolutionaries couldn't believe Kuma had joined the Seven Warlord, considering they worked directly for the world government. Kuma had made a pirate flag with the design Bonnie made for him while sending her tons of letters, saying he'd become pretty famous and it'd be hard to come back for a while. He told her he wanted to travel to lots of places with her once she turned 10. Meanwhile, Luffy was still not even a pirate, but he was already beating up tigers in the forest, and Kuma was chilling in East Blue, ready to carry out an order from the world government. Kuma was watching Luffy take down a giant rock with a kick that split it in half. Luffy was cracking up, asking the animals if that wasn't the coolest thing ever. With that power, he could take on anyone. He even said that not even Ace could beat him. Kuma remembers when he said that dragons seemed really familiar with this country. He even visited this small village to observe a boy. But then the absent father told him to stop talking like that, or he'd end up killing him. Because let's be honest, any dad's weakness is their kids. So Kuma went back to Luffy and said that his new ultimate move would be called the Rubber Axe. He said that one day Luffy would have a crew and they might get into danger, so he'll show up with his rubber axe to knock out everyone. Meanwhile, Tiger and Lizard were totally panicking, and Luffy said he wasn't going to eat those cowards. Then Kuma's Den Den Mushi started ringing, and Luffy ran after it, saying that the presence gave him chills, but he thought it was the mountain boss, so he ran up and smashed a mountain. While Kuma was listening to news about pirates attacking a merchant ship and fleeing, he flew over to help. But instead of dealing with the pirates, he grabbed an injured merchant to take to the hospital. And of course, the government was not happy at all because they wanted him to fight instead. Later that night, Kuma went after the scoundrel, demanding they surrender. And of course, they obeyed because they knew they stood no chance in a fight with him. After that, he wrote another letter to Bonnie, telling her how beautiful the world is and how he can't wait to see her face when she gets to see all of this. Back in Sorbet Kingdom, poor Bonnie kept opening and closing the mailbox, hoping that somehow a letter from her dad would magically appear. The villagers said Kuma must be busy, or maybe the seagull got lost, but Bonnie wasn't having it. She just wanted her dad's letter. Then suddenly a letter arrived along with the newspaper, and Alpha told them to deliver it to the church mailbox. Bonnie ran over, asking if it was a letter, but it was just a newspaper. Alpha was pissed, saying they've received dozens of letters already, and this jerk never gives up. She mocked him, saying she loved Bonnie a lot, and then ripped up the letter just like she had done with all the others. Bonnie was getting frustrated and wanted to vent her anger on someone, so she transformed into a gorilla and called out Gyogya, "Fight!" But then Alpha showed up to give her medicine, and Grandma Connie told Bonnie to turn back into her original form. Alpha got a quick glimpse and was like, "Am I seeing things? Is she an enormous woman?" She then gave Bonnie some medicine. Tasted awful. Turns out it was just a soda. Terrible. A good old placebo. Grandma Connie told Bonnie she needs to keep her abilities a secret for her safety. A wise wolf hides its fangs. You know, Grandma knows what's up. Meanwhile, over at Laboratory 8, Stussy was shocked that one of Vegapunk's inventions was ready. Now he just needed to send the lab and his brain to the sky with the insular clouds. Stussy said she liked the new cut, though it was a head cut, not a haircut. He chopped off that mountain he called his brain and replaced it with an apple antenna. Stussy arrived at the lab, saying she'd heard Kuma was going to lose his free will, and she wanted to know if that was worse than her situation, having free will but being just a clone. Vegapunk told her to stop because, guess what? She's human too. Kuma asks what it means to lose free will, and the old man says he's basically going to lose all his human emotions. So if the world government tells him to eliminate a kid, for example, he'll just do it without thinking twice. Kuma says he's fine with it, but Stussy calls him out, saying that no one could accept that kind of thing so easily. Vegapunk then says he'll make sure to keep a minimum level of free will until everything is done. Kuma's got about a year until then. So he starts writing another letter because as long as he has time, he wants to keep telling Bonnie how much he loves her. He'll write letters for her entire life. Stussy was practically ready to marry this guy on the spot, imagining her future with him. Meanwhile, back in Sorbet Kingdom, they celebrated Bonnie's birthday with a huge pizza. The girl was thrilled because Who doesn't love pizza? They had a blast all night long. Later that night, she kept checking the mailbox. But, of course, no letter from her dad. She started crying because not even on her 9th birthday did her dad send her a letter. Honestly, sometimes I just want to see that Alpha get hit by a truck. She deserves it. At the Revolutionary HQ, Dragon heard that Kuma saved them again. He helped the revolutionaries out of a sticky situation, but they said he left without saying a word. Dragon told them to leave him alone. He must have a reason for this, something he can't talk about. After some time, Bonnie was finally cured. All the stones were gone. She really wanted to go outside, but that Alpha lady showed up again saying she couldn't, because she's under orders to look after her until she turns 10. Bonnie calls her a liar because Vegapunk said she'd be cured in a year. And guess what? It's been a year. She tries to run out, shouting for them to leave her alone. But that Alpha lady grabs her by the arm, leaving a bruise on Bonnie, who'd never been hit by anyone, not even her dad. Then, Grandma Connie spills the tea. Alpha and her friends aren't nurses. They're government intelligence agents. Everyone was shocked to learn that Alpha wasn't really a nurse. She says Bonnie was way ahead of the cure, and that it's strange to keep a healthy girl locked up for over 6 months. She also finds it weird that Kuma hasn't sent a letter yet, right? So Grandma tells Bonnie to go to the sea and find her dad. She hands her the hat, saying, "You'll definitely see him again." The next day, Alpha was on guard at the gate, and Connie said she was heading back to the palace. And boom! Alpha fell right into the trap. Grandma told her the Gyogyo group wasn't just a bunch of regular fishermen. They're so strong they scare even pirates and sea monsters. Yeah, I can totally see him losing to an 8-year-old, right? But they'll help her find Kuma. After 9 years, little Bonnie finally felt the land, the wind, and the water of the world. If you added fire, she'd be the literal avatar. And actually, she switched back to her child form to trick Alpha, because she was too old to fool her now. The old folks were crying with joy because Bonnie really made it outside. The moment she saw the sea, she was in awe. Back at the church, that scumbag Alpha was losing her mind because she couldn't find Bonnie. She asked where the girl was and freaked out when she saw Queen Connie, since, you know, she had just left. And Grandma went full crazy mode, claiming she was Bonnie. Meanwhile, the real Bonnie was even more excited because Gyogyo had made the ship look pizza. Alpha was livid, asking how dare the girl trick her. She went off, saying she was going to make her pay. The crew was ready to set sail, but then Alpha showed up to make the port panic. She said if the hostage escapes, she could use any non-lethal force to capture her. The guys were shaking in their boots when they saw she was using Rokushiki. Bonnie started crying, wondering what she was supposed to do. But then she looked up and saw Nika. He was a bit too chubby to be Nika, but whatever. She smiled and transformed into her adult form. Then she used a warped future to pull off an attack similar to the one Kuma told her was Nika. Alpha said she knew she could transform, but she still took a massive hit to the face that made her look like a squashed bug. Bonnie's escape was immediately reported to the world government, and that fishing boat searching for Kuma turned into a new era pirate ship, just like Luffy's. Out at sea, Bonnie was trying to put on her lipstick when everyone started yelling her name, but it was just because they had finally reached the island where Kuma was. So she got all excited to anchor. The whole crew ran out, and the Marines were already ready to arrest the criminals. They say these guys leave a trail of injured elderly and children wherever they go. And they were mad because these cowards only attack the weak. They were about to start shooting, but Bonnie came in like a wrecking ball, using an age-piercing attack that turned the guys into old people and children. They kept looking for Kuma, who was hiding from her. They couldn't meet, so he teleported far away. The girl was pissed that they couldn't find him. She says she also wants to look for Nika, because Kuma's definitely going to be thrilled when he hears that she found Nika on one of the islands she visited. Meanwhile, Luffy and the crew had just beat down Arlong's pirates, and the captain got his first bounty poster worth 30 million. After that, Dragon headed straight for Logtown, which was under the protection of Captain Smoker. Ace was bragging that his brother was worth 30 million, and Jinbei couldn't believe that his brother defeated Arlong, and Kuma was smiling, saying that his daughter and Dragon's son became pirates. Bonnie said her crew could loot whatever they wanted, but only from the bad guy. She even got a piercing on her cheek so Kuma might recognize her. Now she just needed to get famous, and then he'd definitely notice her. Or at least, that's what she thought. Over in Egghead, Kuma was walking past all the new pacifistas. Vegapunk asked if he heard about the kid who declared war on the world government. He was shocked when he found out he was Dragon's son. The kid literally has Monkey D in his name, just like Dragon, and even with his massive brain, Vegapunk didn't know that. Kuma said there's no reason to hide it from him since he'll have access to all his memories, and said the kid is just like Nika, his hero. After the Straw Hats defeated Gecko Moria, Kuma appeared, saying the world government sent him to eliminate them all. But all they needed to do was hand over Luffy's head to survive. And as you know, they all refused and told Kuma to screw off. So, he blew up the whole island, and Zoro offered to sacrifice his life in Luffy's place, resulting in simply the most epic scene in all of One Piece to this day. And Kuma says Dragon's son really has some good comrades. Then he got a mandatory summons from the Shichibukai, saying if he didn't show up, he'd lose his Corsair title. This was because Portgas D. Ace's execution was scheduled. The poor guy was still laughing his ass off just moments ago. But this execution was definitely going to spark a war against the Whitebeard pirates, and Kuma says he'll be there when the time comes. Bonnie's crew was over at Sabaody, with the captain stuffing her face, complaining that they were taking too long to bring more pizza. And the doting father was watching her from the window, looking like an elephant hiding behind a pole. But this was the last time he'd see his daughter, and he was proud of how strong she's become. Out of nowhere, everyone started running because a pirate punched a Tenryubito, and Kuma was in shock when he saw it was at a human auction. He was already shocked, but he lost it when he saw it was the Straw Hats beating the brakes off the Celestial Dragons. He could not believe they were actually protecting a fishman and a mermaid. He told Luffy that what he did might be considered a betrayal that no one had dared to pull off in centuries. That is why he chose to save the Straw Hats, who were about to get wiped out by the Pacifistas, by launching each one to a different island to get stronger. Luffy was bawling his eyes out because he could not even protect a single crew member. But Kuma knew that was not true. They just were not ready yet to face the monsters in the New World. And he says that one day, Luffy will save the world. After that, Saturn ordered Vegapunk to install a self-destruct system inside Kuma. He was afraid Kuma might lose control if no Elder was around to keep him on a leash. Vegapunk tried to bargain, asking to preserve just a tiny bit of Kuma's free will. But Saturn, in true villain fashion, said there should be absolutely nothing left, and reminded Vegapunk that he was also a scientist, so no funny business. Vegapunk told him that if they wipe everything out, Kuma will never see Bonnie again, and that demon Saturn just hung up like a total jerk. Then Kuma thanked him for the kindness, and Vegapunk was shocked, asking how he heard that call, only to realize he was the one who gave Kuma super hearing in the first place. Sentomaru stayed off the island. He could not bear to watch what was about to happen, because the day had finally come for Kuma to lose 100% of his free will. It was basically a cold-blooded execution. Vegapunk said they had only known each other for 2 years, but they were good times. He told him his first mission would be at the war against the Whitebeard pirates. Then Kuma asked him to assign one more mission after that, to protect the Straw Hats ship until one of them came back, because Luffy's actions moved his soul. He said Nika might just be a myth, but if anyone could save the world and bring smiles to everyone, he believed it was Luffy. And after that, Kuma fulfilled his final promise. He created a copy of all his memories. And of course, those memories included the day he was born, the day he lost his parents, when he was enslaved by the Celestial Dragons, when he met Ginny and shared happy times with her, until losing her to the Sapphire Scale disease, and then raising little Bonnie and finding out she only had 5 years left to live because of the same illness. He gave up his entire life to save his beloved daughter, and he did it with pride and a full heart. Kuma once asked if he was a burden to people, but Dr. Vegapunk, crying his eyes out, said Kuma's death would be a loss to everyone who loved him, because he was a hero to Bonnie and to all of them. And with a heavy heart, he pulled the lever that stripped Kuma of his last drop of freedom. In his final moments, Kuma thanked him for saving Bonnie one last time and asked him to wish her a happy 10th birthday when they meet. And of course, Bonnie couldn't hold back her tears after seeing all of Kuma's memories and how much pain he went through his whole life. Back in Egghead, Bonnie's absolutely wrecked after leaving that secret room. She tells Vegapunk she saw all of Kuma's memory. The old man's all sad because he broke the promise he made to her dad. Just minutes ago, Bonnie was ready to rip the old man's head off, but now she's back to her child form, giving the old man a hug and apologizing. Then, that big mouth of hers asks him to hold out his hand, handing over Kuma's 10-year anniversary gift. It's a sapphire necklace shaped like the sun. Bonnie's pumped because it reminds her of her hero, and Kuma's hero, Nika, the sun god. The old man's like, who would have thought that kid would turn into this? Bonnie asks if Luffy's the son of Kuma's best friend, and Vegapunk says even he was surprised when those two showed up together. Then he tells her everything that happened while she was going through Kuma's memories. A lot went down, right? I mean, she spent like 6 episodes watching that stuff. But finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. We're back to the present where the action is hotter than a barbecue on a summer day, my friend. Bonnie's literally in Saturn's palm, saying it's all his fault. He's the one who made her dad suffer and lose his humanity. The soldiers point their guns at her, and Sanji's pissed because he's stuck. It's not just him. The other 2 weaklings are frozen too. Meanwhile, Luffy's about to pass out asking for food. Please, just a little piece of meat. Atlas says she would get him some but can't move because of the Gorosei's power. The Marines report that they've captured Vegapunk's bodyguard, and poor Sentomaru, aka Big Mac, got beat up before being captured. Kizaru's also face down on the ground, totally immobilized. Looking straight into Bonnie's eyes, Saturn says her dad is dead. He already became a statistic. The Marine HQ wants to know what's happening, but the regular soldiers have no clue. Only the Commodore level can enter the island. Over in frozen Let It Go land, people are reading the news and can't believe the new Yonkou has Vegapunk hostage. They're saying there's no way this ends without some blood being spilled. In another country, they're saying Egghead is even more surrounded than Ohara was, and they're wondering if Dr. Vegapunk is okay. Back at the Revolutionary Army base, Dragon asks where Kuma would go if he had any control over his body. The Funko Pop head guy says if it were him, he'd attack Mary Joie without hesitation. But Kuma? Nah, he'd go somewhere else. Saturn says it's time for Bonnie to meet her dad in the afterlife. The soldiers get ready to fire, and everyone's freaking out. But Bonnie tells him to screw off, and says if she's going down, she's taking him with her. She uses a distorted future of Nika. Saturn can't believe his ears when he hears it. He's even more shocked when those giant arms land right in his face. And even more shocked when Bonnie's attack fails and doesn't even tickle him. The bastard starts squeezing her harder, saying she only knows Nika's name because she's Kuma's daughter, but she has no clue what Nika really is. He says she still hasn't connected Nika with the white version of the Straw Hat Pirates, and calls her dumb as a rock. Meanwhile, Luffy's stuffing his face with Happy Meal toy, eating the toy that comes with the meal. Saturn asks who gave him food, and the soldiers are like, not us. So that crusty geezer ordered them to slap some sea stone cuffs on Luffy as soon as possible. Up above, Bonnie was trying everything, but she could not even change the Gorosei's age. And the old demon just laughed, saying she could not touch him because he was the one who gave her that power in the first place. The shock hit her so hard her nose started bleeding like she just read the plot of Attack on Titan. He explains it was all just a little science fair project. They tested if they could give a devil fruit power to a literal baby using fruit extract. Turns out, the age fruit was a hit, but totally useless in his opinion. What really matters, he says, is the power to transform into any possible future version of herself. Then this crusty lizard starts mocking her for believing Nika is real. But Bonnie snaps, screaming that he is real. She's been searching for Nika ever since her dad got turned into a walking USB drive. But Saturn says her being this weak only proves she is starting to doubt Nika exists at all. Her dad also believed in that fairy tale one, even said he wanted to save people like Nika. And as if that was not evil enough, this guy casually drops that he did drug experiments on her mother too. Bonnie's heart is beating like it is about to call it quits. Then suddenly, boom! A meteor crashes onto the island, blowing everything up like the season finale of an action anime. Bonnie keeps crying, saying all of this is Saturn's fault. Vegapunk loses it and asks if all this pain was really just one of his sick experiments. The old man cannot believe Saturn had the nerve to offer Kuma a deal to save his daughter, as if he was not the one who caused all of it in the first place. But Saturn, full of himself as always, tells Vegapunk to walk a mile in his boots. Would he care about the emotions of bugs? Trash has no rights in his eye. He stomps the ground like a toddler having a tantrum and says garbage is not worth sympathy. Meanwhile, that meteor, it was Daddy of the Year landing in style. The Marines are panicking. Was that a pacifista? But nope, this one has bear paws. That was the real Bartholomew Kuma. He blasts a Kamehameha that deletes a whole building like it owed him money. A soldier screams that the southeast coast of Egghead is under attack by ex-warlord Kuma. Everyone is losing their mind, and Vegapunk asks what Kuma is doing here. Saturn, the cocky lizard that he is, says there is nothing to worry about. Kuma cannot possibly be there. Yeah, okay, keep telling yourself that, Cupcake. This Gorosei goon is about to meet the real definition of fear. Bonnie is so scared she cannot even hear what anyone is saying. Doberman orders everyone to open fire to stop Kuma from reaching the center of the island. They launch cannonballs straight into his back, but the dude does not stop. He is marching like a tank, ignoring bullets like they are mosquito bites. He nearly falls, but then he hears Bonnie crying, and suddenly he finds strength in places he did not even know existed. He starts body slamming everyone in his path like a one-man demolition squad. Saturn, annoyed that she is still alive, decides to finish Bonnie off for good. He tells the Marines to aim straight for her chest, while the others scream at them to stop. But just in time, Kuma arrives like a bear-shaped angel of death, blasting anyone who points a weapon at his daughter. Saturn tosses Bonnie to the ground like yesterday's leftovers. She sobs, saying even after all that, she is still going to die. She apologizes for not being strong enough. Then Saturn winds up his leg for the big stomp, but Kuma slides in like a linebacker and takes the hit straight to the back to protect Bonnie. She is crying her eyes out, not sure whether to scream or hug him. Saturn cannot believe what he is seeing. He rips Kuma's claws off and blasts him again, but the bear grabs the shot mid-air, and the impact makes Saturn drop his cane like an old man tripping over a Lego. He asks Vegapunk how this is even possible. Kuma was supposed to be dead. Kuma glares at him and remembers every single moment of pain. His entire family enslaved, everything he loved taken from him, but he is still alive, still standing, still fighting for the one person he can still protect. Saturn says he should be scrap metal. After all, when the Revolutionary Army rescued him, they activated his self-destruct protocol. But look at him now, alive and kicking. And with all that pain built up inside, he throws one punch fueled by every ounce of rage he's carried for decades. And that hit sends Saturn flying like he just got launched out of the One Piece universe. Everyone is stunned. Bonnie is sobbing. Kuma's punch was so strong, it sent Saturn flying and knocked down a bunch of buildings. They came crashing down on that fool, squashing him like a pancake. The crew was absolutely stunned, unable to believe their eyes, and the Marines were just as shocked because he literally just punched one of the most powerful authorities in the world. This punch made Luffy's smack on the Celestial Dragon look like child's play. After that, Kuma collapsed to his knees, and the soldiers rushed to rescue Saturn. Bonnie kept crying, but the Straw Hats could finally move again. They rushed to take Bonnie, but Sanji told them to stop, because even though Kuma was all stiff, he managed to move just enough to get to his daughter. But the worst part was when Sanji realized the FBI could be knocking on his door any moment now, because now he knew Bonnie was actually a kid. Kuma hugged her, and Frankie was out here competing with the girl to see who could cry more. Vegapunk was completely lost because he had installed a self-destruct device on Kuma, and once the switch was flipped, he should have been completely immobilized like a vegetable, and even science couldn't explain it. He says it's not physical strength that makes pirates special. Meanwhile, Kizaru was finally getting back on his feet, and Sentomaru, all battered up, was happy Kuma made it. But the soldiers were freaking out because they couldn't find Luffy anywhere. They didn't know how to report that he'd just dipped. After that, Kuma was completely powered down, and Bonnie thanked him for everything he did. She knew everything because she saw his memory, all the happy and sad moments he lived. With a waterfall of tears in her eyes, she said how happy she was to see him again. She said her mother was an incredible woman. She supported him all the way and would throw hands with anyone who messed with him. He was a bit of a doofus for rejecting Ginny when she asked him to marry her, but she knew it was all for her own good. And now Bonnie knew that Kuma never stopped thinking about her for a second. She also knew he wrote her several letters. They never arrived because of that rat Alpha. He wrote about everything he did while traveling the world and how impressed he was with Dr. Vegapunk's inventions. He couldn't wait to go on an adventure with her. The girl hugged him, saying that even though everyone calls him a tyrant, he's the kindest person in the world, and she promised she'd never forget that. Meanwhile, the Marines were still trying to dig up Saturn. He started releasing such monstrous energy that it sent everyone flying. The crew was in shock because they thought the Gorosei was a goner, ready to be printed on a t-shirt. But then Saturn crawled out in his Spider-Man form and landed like a Marvel hero. But let's be real, this old man was no hero. His arm got ripped off, and even that fool couldn't regenerate anymore. He asks Vegapunk if it was him who did this, but the old man says it was the power of love. The horned guy says this is just a mistake and starts regenerating again. His horn gets all shiny and his arm is good as new. The backyard chef asks how his body regenerated so fast. Now that the Gorosei was all good, he says he doesn't need Kuma anymore and starts throwing his claws at him again. But Sanji comes in with a kick to stop that old bearded dude. Frankie shouts that Kuma helped them out a bunch of times. He then readies a laser beam to blow that bum away. But Kizaru stands up and says they've really grown. The giant robot stabs Saturn and tells him to go to hell. But Borsalino pops up behind him, saying, "Show me how strong you've got," and kicks him right in the face, sending him to the ground like a pigeon turd. Bonnie says Kuma isn't moving, and Vegapunk tells Atlas to carry him to the lab. She carries him on her back, and Applehead says he'll take care of Saturn. They should focus on Bonnie and Kuma. Kizaru asks if they're going to let them escape, but Saturn doesn't care. Vegapunk calls him a coward because he doesn't have the guts to finish him off. He even calls him Borsalino and remembers when they used to have fun as best friends. On the ship, Doberman listens to Saturn's order to punish those who defy the world government. In other words, he's calling in a full-on buster call. This island was deemed a threat to the government, and it's about to get a destruction call to wipe everything out. But this time, they wouldn't have to wait for the ships to arrive because they were already surrounding Egghead. They were ready to burn the entire island to the ground with not even a single soul left alive. Vegapunk freaks out when he hears the buster call. Saturn says that those who study the world's secrets, those who carry the blood of a lost race, and those who awakened an ancient god must be completely obliterated. The buster call was finally activated. Vegapunk asks Saturn to cancel the order because this island is the future of humanity. The Marines were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to evacuate the island, and they wanted to know what the heck was happening at the center of the island to cause this madness. Meanwhile, the crew was hauling Kuma on Atlas's back. Vegapunk kept insisting, but then the doll girl interrupted. She told Saturn and Kizaru to get to their ships because the island was about to turn into a war zone. But the horned guy said they were staying until everything was ready. He then ordered the bombardment to start, and the doll girl was like, "You've got to be kidding me." Kizaru told her to leave if she didn't want to end up as a pancake. Vegapunk asked if they were really going to solve everything by just killing him. After all, Egghead houses some of the most incredible scientific discoveries. Destroying the island would wipe out a century's worth of scientific progress, and he begged Kizaru, who could barely look him in the eye. Saturn asked if Vegapunk was still hiding something from them, and he said they didn't need that progress. Vegapunk begged again for the sake of humanity, but the jerk said he forgot to mention the ship that escaped from the island yesterday. He'd already ordered his soldiers to chase them down and destroy them, because there might be someone who knows about the Void Century on that ship. And to make sure no one survived, he sent a warship to turn them into chopped meat. Vegapunk lost it because those people were innocent and didn't know anything. But Saturn said they were complicit, just like the people of Ohara. They broke the law and got what they deserved. So all of them, along with the island, deserve to be wiped out. What a nice guy Saturn is, huh? Just setting humanity back. The ships were almost ready to fire. The Straw Hats took the opportunity to escape through the vacuum rocket while Vegapunk distracted the ace. Bonnie asked what would happen to Vegapunk, but Sanji told her not to worry because he'd go fetch the old man. He then called Nami to check on things. He explained that Saturn triggered that damn buster call. Chopper and Usopp were freaking out, saying they couldn't take any more of these destruction calls. Imagine Robin, who's about to get her third one, considering she already survived one when she was 8. Chopper told her to keep resting, and Nami asked if Luffy was down there. Sanji didn't know where he was, but figured he was fine. And Zoro was still fighting Rob Lucci. Jinbei went to help Zoro so he wouldn't get lost on the way back. The problem is, they couldn't use the Vega Force to take them to the sea anymore. Kizaru destroyed it, but then she said that Brook had an idea to escape. Meanwhile, Brook was cracking up, saying that carrying a ship on land was nothing for him. Lilith said he was a genius, because this way they'd reach the exit super fast, since he froze the clouds to make the ship slide. But then she asked how they would stop the ship, and Brook looked like he was caught in headlights. He took a hit when he admitted he hadn't thought of that part. She screamed that they were going to crash if they didn't do something. Meanwhile, the ships kept surrounding the island, and Doberman said the barrier was still up. So he gave the order for the ships to destroy the central factory and Egghead City. And finally, the terrible buster call began. It was bullets, punches, and explosions everywhere, and the city started being completely obliterated. Meanwhile, Luffy kept stuffing his face, eating like a hippo. The soldiers ask if that's the Straw Hat and order them to capture the Yonko, but they get blasted by cannonballs before they can do anything. The bombs just keep coming, and the soldiers are screaming to wait because they haven't even run yet. To make things worse, there were pacifistas shooting their laser beams that were setting the city on fire. Vegapunk can only watch in despair as everything he worked for gets destroyed right before his eyes. He can't believe all his effort is being thrown down the drain, and there's nothing he can do. The future of humanity is doomed, and his dreams are shattered. Saturn orders Kizaru to do what needs to be done, and holding back his tears, he walks towards Vegapunk to execute the guy. Sanji shows up, asking what the hell Vegapunk is still doing here. Atlas's group was escaping on the vacuum rocket, but, of course, good things never last, because Kizaru suddenly appears beside them and whips them with a laser beam, slicing their ship in half. The crew flies off, and Sanji speeds off, yelling he's going to save Bonnie. The rest of them can just figure it out. Saturn tells the pacifistas that the targets are Bonnie and Kuma. They prepare missiles to exterminate them both, but the pacifistas recognize Bonnie and hesitate. The real Kuma grabs Bonnie mid-air, and Saturn laughs, saying this is so ironic, because Kuma sacrificed himself to save Bonnie, and now his own clone is going to kill her. He says it's a fitting end for these insects. Vegapunk watches Bonnie fall and says that when he found out she had become a pirate, he shook in his boots because he knew a horrible future was waiting for her. One day, the pacifistas with her father's face might be ordered to execute her, but outside, the Marines failed to destroy the escaping researchers. Their ships were completely obliterated. In their last breaths, one of them sends a message to Kizaru saying that someone is heading straight for Egghead. Egghead Island was getting totally wrecked, and out of nowhere, Toei threw in some fucking 3D into the anime. But hey, we're rolling with it. I was this close to exploding at home with all that quality. The Marines pointed their little piercing toys at Luffy in whale mode, and he just tells them to try their luck if they think they stand a chance. The kid starts snoring like a motorcycle and does a super digestion move that instantly snaps his body back to normal. And the chubby guy is already trying to learn how to eat that much without gaining a pound, just sitting there wondering where all the food went. Suddenly, bombs started raining down where they were. Luffy grins, and the guys were getting swallowed by the flame. Someone asked where the Straw Hat went, and all they got was laughter along with the drums of freedom. The Marine says even though he's a Yonko, they have the numbers. So the three of them were going to grab him with Kairoseki together. They pulled out their handcuffs, but before they could finish counting, the ground started bouncing like a trampoline. Everyone got thrown into the air and ran straight into the kid cosplaying as Jack Frost, sprayed all that white powder in his hair, but let's be honest, it looked like he snorted a bit too. He's bouncing around like a 5-year-old, and the soldiers who were full of courage just moments ago take the chance to leg it. Back on the ships, they kept launching cannonballs at the island, and I cannot handle this CGI. It goes from 3D to 2D in 1 second. At the center, Vegapunk watches the crew falling from the sky like pigeon poop. He calls Atlas with his walkie-talkie to save Bonnie and Kuma. The rest of them can just figure it out. Saturn orders the pacifistas to shoot them, and Sanji's climbing in slow motion to rescue the girl. Atlas reaches Bonnie and tells her to listen carefully. The girl makes a weird face but follows instructions, turning to the pacifistas and ordering them not to shoot and to help them escape the island. Nobody understood a thing, and the soldiers on the coast swear they heard something. Then, just like that, the pacifistas obey and turn their lasers on the Navy ships. The game literally flipped in 5 seconds, and now all the Marine weapons are pointing at themselves. They sent a Kamehameha that blew up the ships, and that 3D wooden stick nearly shot through my computer screen. Vegapunk breathes a sigh of relief as it works, and the vessels start getting wrecked one by one. The old man says his only fear is that Bonnie ends up as dust at her father's hands. There is no way he could let that happen. That's why he programmed all the Kuma Pacifista clones to obey Bonnie, with a control chip even more authoritative than the Gorosei themselves. That way, Kuma would always be on her side. But then Saturn stabs him in the back with those sharp claws. He tries to cosplay Ace with a hole in his stomach, but Saturn is blind as a bat and hits his chest instead. Everyone goes nuts, and Bearded Hornhead orders Kizaru to wipe them out immediately. Borsalino teleports in, raining shots that leave them like a colander full of holes. Sanji launches himself at the Admiral with a flying kick, but he dodges, saying he's going to cut those two in half. He tells Bonnie not to worry though. It will be fast and painless. The Egg Fryer activates turbo mode, running at 300 miles per hour. But it's too late. All they hear is a maniacal laugh and a giant fist barreling in, smashing Kizaru like a bullet train. The lantern guy kissed the ground, and Luffy grabbed his arm. This kid is so insane he lands that punch straight from the floor while bouncing around like a flea. He's like, now that my stomach is full, I am going all out, 100% power. He turns the entire island into a giant bouncing playground that just will not stop dancing. Saturn is totally confused because the ground looks like jelly and the kid is hopping from side to side like a frog. The crew falls from above, but instead of splatting on the floor, they land perfectly fine. And they're still right in front of the big boss, who just told Vegapunk to take a nap. The soldiers are so distracted by the bouncing island, they totally forget they are being blasted with bazookas. Kizaru gets gets up from that hit, and Bonnie runs straight to the old man with the apple head. She's relieved he's still breathing and yells for everyone to get out of there. But Saturn the Horned tells them not to waste their time because bugs always meet the same fate. Out of nowhere, a beat drops that shocks everyone. Luffy fires up his JBL, blasting a wicked pagodown beat that even wakes Emeth from his 200-year beauty sleep. Bonnie hears the song and immediately remembers Nika's dance her father taught her, the same one they used to do together every night. Kuma says that one day Nika would show up, cracking up and shaking that booty. Vegapunk asks if she still hadn't realized, but even he wasn't sure until he saw it with his own eyes. The Straw Hat Luffy that Kuma had protected so fiercely was none other than Nika, the sun god. And when Bonnie sees the kid striking that pose, there's no more doubt. She starts crying because Kuma was right the whole time. Vegapunk says that this Buster Call is useless. People from all over the world have been waiting for this for centuries. Meanwhile, a massive ship is heading to Egghead. The Navy ships are falling one by one with nothing they can do. The lookout warns something is approaching, but it is not a sea beast weapon. They come face to face with a colossal ship and rush to alert all troops. The shields and Viking banners erase any doubt anyone could have had. Everyone thought these guys had disappeared over 100 years ago, but this ship is only massive because its crew members are even bigger. They are about to plow through every Navy troop gathered, bomb raining down, but the cannonballs barely scratch the boat. They ask what the hell these giants are doing here, and from above, none other than the giant warriors Dory and Brogy jump down, playing seesaw and sending those weak soldiers flying. They draw their weapons and destroy those warships like they're toy boats. Brogy says they came for the Straw Hat. Dory is hyped to see the sun god. Now the brawl is about to go full throttle, my dude. The Marines bolted in panic as soon as they saw the giants. Brogy smashed the ground with his axe and sent those guys flying like action figures. The two of them jumped onto Egghead Island, shouting that they came for the Straw Hat. Their crew showed up right after, running over the Navy and storming the island. And they told them to take care of the annoying ships around the island. Kashi and Oimo took charge and charged forward, smashing the ships like they were little toy boats. The Navy soldiers were freaking out, asking why all these ancient giant warriors were on this island. They tried firing cannonballs to stop them, but another ship got obliterated before it even had a chance. The warriors were slicing warships one by one, turning into the ultimate nightmare for every troop. From up in the clouds, Usopp was spotting the giants and screaming that the masters had arrived. But with that size, he didn't even need binoculars to see them, right? He was worried, thinking he'd never see them again, even if they went back to Elbaf. He remembered when the whole world feared the giant pirates. But they split up because of a fight between the two captains, Dory and Brogy. The Straw Hats met them in Little Garden in the middle of that battle. It had been going on for so long, they even forgot what started it. Usopp said he wanted to be a brave sea warrior like them. Oimo and Kashi had met them back when they were gatekeepers at Eni's lobby for 50 years, and now they were all gathered on Egghead to help the crew escape this nightmare. Edson could not believe they had such strong allies. He said they must have come after reading the government news, and now everyone was getting ready to make a run for it. Nami asked where Brook was, but could only hear Lilith screaming. The skeleton said to chill. He was coming with the Sunny. He was totally relaxed, not even thinking about how to stop the ship. Lilith screamed that if they fell off the island, they'd crash into the barrier and blow up. Meanwhile, Zoro was locked in a fight to the death with Rob Lucci, and Jinbei was flying like a manatee to help the swordsman. Zoro told Tigger to stop bugging him because he was in a hurry, but the little punk said only the winner gets to say that. He lunged again with those sharp claws, claiming he heard the swordsman was a burden slowing down his crew. Zoro dodged a kick and blocked the maniac ready to slice someone. Lucci said they were a bunch of idiots who couldn't leave a single member behind. So as long as the mop head is breathing, the Straw Hats will stay trapped here. But his logic is completely whack, right? Because if by some miracle he killed Zoro, the Straw Hats would challenge the devil himself for revenge. Down below, over 30 Navy ships had already been sunk. Vice Admiral Red King ordered the smaller and medium ships to fall back, leaving only the warships to push forward. He ordered them to shoot the pacifists, but he couldn't believe they had to attack their own guns. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, two crazy maniacs were just chilling. Yep, Van Augur and Katarina Devon lost in the woods like nothing was happening, and thinking about how to spice up this fight even more. In the center, Bonnie could not believe her eyes. Luffy asked why she was crying like a total baby, and of course, she said she was crying because she had been looking for him all this time. Luffy asks if she hit her head since he was with her the whole time, but she says she did not know he was Nika. The kid had no clue what she was talking about, and she tells him she always wanted to throw rubber punches like him. Then he remembers that embarrassing moment from earlier when she barely tapped Saturn, but she screams that she wants to see the real punches since he is the big boss, and she tells him to punch that old bearded guy in the face to get back at Vegapunk. Luffy is totally confused, and his eyes practically popped out when he saw the scientist on the ground with a hole in his chest. Saturn says these bugs deserve nothing but death, but Luffy disagrees and says he will get everyone off this island, telling Bonnie to learn how to throw a real punch. He was about to unleash a massive beatdown until Saturn fired an invisible haki shot that stopped him. But of course, he did not give up and spun back like a helicopter, asking what the heck he was doing hurting his friend. He unleashed a rubber dawn machine gun that scraped Saturn's face, rained down a storm of punches that slammed into the miserable villain's face, and Bonnie just watched the Liberator warrior who was going to save this world someday. The Gorosei was almost turning into a pancake from all the punches he had taken. Luffy finished him off with a crushing punch loaded with haki, sending Saturn flying backwards while doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk, and after wrecking that trash across the buildings, he laughed like nothing happened. Atlas screams that this is their chance to escape. She told Bonnie to activate her float mode and fly over the island. The girl asked Vegapunk to come with them, but the old man told her to go ahead, because he is a medical expert and knew that moving now would kill him. But Kizaru shows up again saying he will die even without moving, and fires a deadly laser to kill two birds with one stone. But the Friar of Fate arrives with a once-in-20-years move and blocked that Raduken with a simple kick. Borsalino is jaw-dropped, and Frankie even more, screaming that it was a laser beam. Sanji says he does not care because love is stronger than light, and I just hope all that love is for Vegapunk, or you better get ready to turn into a softie in jail, my friend. Kizaru says if that were true, physics would not exist. The Supreme Cattle tells Frankie not to let Bonnie get hurt, and to get out of there while he handles the Lantern Guy. Bonnie did not want to go without Vegapunk, but the old man said she needs to go with Kuma, and they fly off toward the northeast coast. Luffy starts cracking up while bouncing, telling Sanji that this was insane. Kizaru says he will lose face if he leaves without the heads of the two, but the Egg Friar says he just has to write an apology to the Navy, and it is all good. Saturn was buried under the rubble, and Katarina asks if he is not one of the five elders. She asked what kind of power that was, and said she had never seen an elder descend personally to the lower world, but that was a huge help. She put her hand on his leg and said the mission was complete. Saturn asks why they are here. He never imagined that the level 6 Impel Down savages would be someone's pawns, but she says Teach is special, just like her lineage. The bearded guy says they are always plotting evil plans and asks again what they want. Van Augur's answer? Nothing less than the world. Saturn tries to crush them, but the two bounce away. After all, the mission was already complete. Now that she touched down, she could transform into one of the highest authorities in the world. Big Nose asks if Augur could not have teleported them farther from the island, but he says he is still training. But behind them was undoubtedly one of the ugliest characters in the anime. Caribou was crying his eyes out and begging them to wait. He said he never expected to see these two legends here, Van Augur the Supersonic and Katarina Devon the Crescent Moon Hunter. He said he went to the sea with the dream of being like them. His dream is to be one of Teach's men, the terrible Blackbeard, and he begged them to let him see the captain. Caribou says he is hyped to finally meet Blackbeard's pirates. He's been waiting for this moment his whole life. Says there's something Teach is gonna love knowing. So if they introduce him to the captain, they'll earn some brownie points with the big guy. But Augur points that weird poking device at him, and the slimy dude freaks out, saying he's not their enemy and that this meeting is fate. The sniper wants to know what a pirate like him is doing on a world government island. He says the captain has tons of assassins on his tail, but Caribou swears he is not one of them. Adds that if they kill him now, Teach will smash their faces in, and that only makes Augur more pumped to pull the trigger. He claims to have info no one else has, but Katarina says it's just a bluff from some idiot trying to save his own skin. Yet he is certain this info will shake the whole world. It's about the ancient weapons named after the old gods. One of them is Poseidon, the power of Princess Shirahoshi, and the other is Pluton, hidden somewhere in Wano. Probably. Only he and the Straw Hats know where these insane weapons are. Van Augur asks what he knows. Of course, he cannot spill it here. Says if they let him meet Teach, he'll hand over everything. Meanwhile, off the coast, a massive war rages between the pacifistas and the Navy ships. Ships keep getting blown up one by one. Sailors try to fight back, but the pacifistas' bubble shields are so strong they laugh off cannonball. The Navy tries to retreat, but the pacifistas show no mercy, blasting lasers that annihilate everything. Vice Admiral Doberman orders the ships to pull back from the shore. They had zero chance against these giant robots, and Egghead will be impossible to take if they do not regain control. Other Vice Admirals start whining that nothing but disaster ever happens on this island. They want to cancel the Buster Call now that the giants are on Egghead, but Guillotine says Vegapunk gave the pacifistas authority to a pirate. That means they gotta make the old man suffer and regret betraying the world government. So the new plan is to regain control of the Pacifista. And for that, they need to take out the pirate jewelry Bonnie. Vice Admiral Tosa is already racing toward them, trying to get close enough to take out the girl. They notice the Marine getting close and push the Dom boots to max power. But Frankie is not used to this speed and almost faceplants straight into the dirt. After flying like a confused cockroach, he regains control and has to zigzag between the trees so he does not become a woodpecker. Tosa is more of a brute and wants to prove he is no soft punch. He starts smashing trees like a raging bear, and if he does this to a thick tree, imagine what he would do to tiny Bonnie. He says his claws are 10 shiggins that can tear through even armor. Finally, he gets close and goes in for a Tosa bite ready to crush the poor girl. But at the last second, a massive axe falls right on him. Everyone is confused and just sees Broggy and Dory grinning like a couple of maniacs, are in shock asking what the giants are doing on this island. They are already pressed for time and more enemies show up. Broggy asks who they are. He checked the wanted posters for the new members but does not recognize any of them. So they ask if they are Egghead workers. Dory says they came because of the straw hat, and Frankie asks what they could possibly have against his captain, but the giant replies they hold nothing but gratitude. They are warriors from Elbaf, so if they are Luffy's allies, they will protect them at all costs. Other giants show up, saying they are all on the same side. Frankie loses it because he was about to soil his pants from sheer terror. Broggy apologizes, saying it is all his fault. The giants burst out laughing. Bonnie jumps in to say that Luffy, Sanji, and Vegapunk are still in the center of the island. She asks if they can help, and Big Mac says of course they can. So the crew hops a ride with the giants to their ship. Blackbeard tells them to leave everything to the captains, and Frankie asks if these are the masters Usopp is always talking about. Meanwhile, at sea, the vice admirals are furious they lost contact with Tosa. They speculate he was either defeated or ran into a giant, which honestly is basically the same thing. Unless that Marine was Levi Ackerman, then the giant would be shaking in his boots. Pomsky was heading to the island and Bluegrass was coming by sea. Meanwhile, Doll's kitty flew and hitched a ride with the crusty old lady. If this woman did not have lungs black from smoking, I might even marry her. The old lady with dentures asks if she has ever fought a giant. Doll says her boss 20 years ago was a giant. Bluegrass adds that Saul was insanely strong back then. The giant who looked like a beaver asks where the rest of the crew is. When Frankie says they are in the lab above the clouds, the giant thinks they are in Skype. Up above, Saturn is a complete wreck. His body starts shaking, and he transforms into a Satan uglier than before. Wherever the spider lady walked, everything rotted. Luffy rushes to check if Vegapunk is okay, but the old man's heart is already close to retiring permanently. The kid says if the crown does not fight, they will not make it, but he would die for sure if he moved. Kizaru complains that they are nothing but headaches, and Sanji says it is time for him to go home and stop bothering everyone. But Saturn comes back looking like a Twitter feminist ready to cancel you. Luffy says he promised to help Apple Uncle escape the island, but Vegapunk says there is still something he needs to protect. He wants to tell Bonnie about her authority when she grows up, and he asks them to take care of her because her life is in extreme danger. Sanji notes Saturn looks less and less human. He realizes he is poisoning and rotting everything he touches. Gorosei aims at the two distracted people, and Sanji yells to watch out. He saves the old man before he is crushed to dust, but he cannot move much, or he will lose even more blood. Sanji dodges another attack, and Luffy gets ready to strike back. With two massive slaps, he claps and starts mocking Saturn. The guy flies into a rage, swinging at the kid in every direction. The captain orders Sanji to get the old man out. He blocks Gorosei, who was about to interfere, saying that this horned fool is no match for them. The horned villain goes full berserk, and Luffy dodges every blow while laughing at him, making Saturn look like a fool while the two escape. Vegapunk says that is enough, but Sanji tells him to shut up, and he takes a boot right to the face to teach him a lesson. The old man flies back, and the pub cook realizes things just got serious, because Kizaru plunged his sword into Vegapunk's back, leaving a massive hole in his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Sanji and Luffy scream in panic, and his vital signs start dropping fast. Luffy orders Sanji to get Vegapunk to the other side of the island, and with an even bigger hole in his chest, the old man is hanging by a thread. Borsalino is already on their tail, but Luffy is not having it. He starts growing massive while yelling at them, calling them a bunch of miserable jerks. He grabs Kizaru midair with his right hand, dodges a massive massive blow and snatches the horned guy's head, making those two punks truly feel the wrath of a Yonko when he is pissed. He starts crushing them, yelling that they are going nowhere. Vegapunk starts laughing at the kid putting the big guys in their place. In his last words, he says there will be nothing left for the weaklings. His heart finally stops, and Sanji screams like a madman. He tells him to hold on and asks why he is smiling. But then a broadcast starts rolling across the entire world. He introduces himself as Dr. Vegapunk, a humble and genius scientist, and he says the message he is about to leave will shock the entire world. It is none other than the hidden truth of the world itself. Shaka says it is not smart to just blurt it out right away. People need to actually pay attention. The old man warns that the moment some sneaky journalist finds out, it will spread all over the world. But the giant robot says there is a chance they can manipulate the info. So they decided to stall a little before dropping the real bomb. They said these mind waves will broadcast worldwide, hacking the Navy's system and creating one massive transmission. The Marines tried to shut it down but could not stop it at all. The tavern cook is completely lost and asks why he is hearing Vegapunk's voice. Saturn and Kizaru are still trapped in Luffy's grip like flies in a spiderweb. Shaka says they need to wait until everyone can turn on their video Den Den Mushi, and Luffy spots the helmet dude, who says they will wait 1 hour so the whole world can get ready. Saturn is in shock, asking what they plan to reveal. Vegapunk says 1 hour is way too much time. Nami and Usopp start whining that while they are doing everything to escape, Vegapunk is just chatting away. But Chopper and Tinhead find it weird because they heard Shaka's voice even though he got shot by York. Not even Edison knew what the heck was happening. The giants marched through the forest with huge grins because something big was about to go down. They kept searching for the Straw Hat. The Marines joined up, and the giants called them a bunch of idiots. The soldiers fired and caused a massive explosion, but it did not even tickle these monstrous warriors. They hit back by smashing their axes into the ground and sending everyone flying, destroyed that human anthill in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Vegapunk says he will give them 10 minutes to get ready. Innocent Luffy says, as usual, that Vegapunk and Shaka are still alive and kicking. Now it was time to wipe out those government trash. Over in Marijois, the Celestial Dragons wanted to know what kind of broadcast this was. St. Marcus asks what happened to Vegapunk. Saturn replies telepathically that Kizaru killed him, and he saw it with his own eyes. Topman Elbigadon says he could only have left a message programmed to trigger after his death. They needed to find the source of the broadcast as fast as possible. It had to be somewhere in Egghead's Laba Stratus, protected by a barrier. The only thing they knew is that if Vegapunk reveals the truth about the world, Imu-sama will shred them to bits. While waiting for the 10 minutes to pass, the old man goes to grab a coffee. In Dressrosa, the people start realizing something, saying that the famous Dr. Vegapunk is trying to reveal something to the world. Everyone rushed to the plaza to watch on their video Den Den Mushi. At this speed, the signal would barely make it before the speech ended. Rebecca arrives from training, ready to watch the broadcast. Leo and Kabu show up asking if this is the scientist Luffyland held hostage. But Rebecca tells him to stop being dumb because this is obviously government lies. Lucy would never do something so cowardly. Hiro says it looks like Vegapunk is speaking freely and on his own, so he is probably not being threatened by anyone. In Fuchsia Village, the people were also getting ready. They thought it would be about Luffy doing something bad again. They said this truth about the world thing is total nonsense, but they were still curious. The village is poor and could not even afford a video Den Den Mushi, so they would just listen on the radio. In Water 7, everyone started waking up in the middle of the night. Iceberg immediately tells his maid to get the video Den Den Mushi ready, but the girl was sharp and had already turned it on. She even set up screens at all the shipyards. In Morgan's magical balloon, Wapel Windhead is completely confused. The parrot explains that Vegapunk is broadcasting this using Navy tech. Vivi asks where Luffy and the others are, but Morgans calls her dumb and tells her to check the timestamp on the recording. This is not Egghead's current time, so these images must be pre-recorded. He says the place must already be worse than hell after a buster call, and he wants to make a headline about this story that will shake the world. Vivi can only pray that Luffy and the others get out alive. In West Blue, everyone is ready for the broadcast, saying this scientist is crazy for chopping off his head and sticking an Apple antenna on it. In North and South Blue, people are curious about what he wants to say to the whole world. world. And in the three-legged women's kingdom, they are drooling, calling Vegapunk the old man on the boat. Shaka says it will take 10 minutes to brew the coffee. But at this rate, nobody will even get a sip. Ivankov starts laughing at Vegapunk's head, which is way smaller than last time. Koala asks if these are the famous copies of the Doctor. Morley wants to know how he can broadcast this message while being held hostage. Sabo asks Dragon if Vegapunk will really reveal the truth about the world. The absentee dad remembers the conversation he had with Shaka months ago, saying he knew he would die soon, and he keeps thinking that is the only thing he has done since the anime started. For 28 years, Dragon has literally done nothing. No fighting, no escaping captivity, not even showing a little power to us. At Egghead, the giant beaver is almost there while carrying Frankie and the others, and the giant robot is stunned when he comes face to face with the warrior's ship from Elbaf. That was Great Irek, and they would set sail as soon as the bosses returned. Bonnie is worried, asking if Vegapunk will come back safe. He will, girl, trust him. The Gorosei are calmly watching the broadcast as if time is on their side. Luffy says that even after all those punches, the bearded guy is still intact. Borsalino tries to catch him off guard and shoots a laser from his eyes, but Luffy barely dodges and says that as long as his friends are not free, these two will go nowhere. He hits a Gomu Gomu no Donshibaru, sending Saturn and Kizaru flying with a massive kiss. Stuck together, this is the famous "till death do us part." They get so flattened they look like Aladdin's magic carpet. Luffy starts spinning them like pizza dough. He says that since the horned guy always recovers, this time he will send both of them to the ends of the world. He throws them to the moon and starts cracking up. The Marines see something coming toward them from afar. They take a Gomu Gomu no Kizaru right in the face as a warning. A whole warship explodes and Saturn is next, but the bastard regains control and heads back toward Luffy. Caught off guard, he almost has a heart attack from shock, asking why nothing can hurt this old rascal. Kizaru is just a limp coat on the deck, thinking back to the moment he had to stab Vegapunk. The Gorosei tell Saturn that time is running out. They cannot let Vegapunk reveal everything he knows. Luffy dodges all the Gorosei's assassination attempts that have now finally stopped spinning. He glares at Saturn, who looks even uglier, like a sick pig, and he begins the incantation. Out of nowhere, a blue flame and a pentagram appear on Egghead's ground, and they also appear in Mary Joie in front of the Gorosei. That fat butt better get off the couch and activate the world government's overpowered mode. Suddenly, the weather in Egghead flips and a sinister black lightning strikes. Luffy is shocked, asking what the heck is going on. Sanji says it looks exactly like when the old spider showed up. One demon was not enough, so now all 5 are coming to turn Egghead into a nightmare. Pinocchio says they really want out of there, but Zoro and Jinbei haven't arrived yet. The Fishman says he's almost there. The battle isn't over, but he's gonna drag Zoro in. I want to see him jump into this mess without turning into tuna tartare. Tiger Boy is full-on raging, and Zoro even more so. Rob Lucci lands a storm kick so strong it splits the forest trees in half. Mid-air, he runs into a strike from Zoro and has to tank it with his iron body. Zoro blasts into infinity, ready to shred some jaguar meat, but suddenly a sinister presence shows up and shocks them both. They're wondering where the hell it came from. They pull back to gain speed and strike again, but that monstrous aura returns and terrifies them both. Zoro's Enma even takes flight because now it identifies as a bird, and by now you know whose monstrous hockey that is, right? And no, surprisingly, it's not Jinbei. Rob Lucci says he's sure Zoro felt that hockey too, because it was spreading all over the island, and right after, they're back to trying to chop each other's heads off. After searching forever, Jinbei finally finds them. Zoro charges with blood in his eyes at insane speed, punching a hole through the sky like it's nothing. They're moving so fast, it's basically impossible to follow. But then Sanji drops a Discord message that Zoro's slowing everyone down and is just dead weight. That went straight into Zoro's ears, and he went full-on berserk, because getting called dead weight by a fried pastry chef is one of the ultimate humiliations ever. Tiger Boy struts toward him, activating his power. He unleashes a terrifying aura and hits with a Shigan. Actually, multiple Shigans, spawning a bunch of hands and raining blows like a Shoryuken storm. But Zoro dodges everything like it's in slow-mo, eyes closed, just to flex his superiority. He zigzags, jumps off a rock, and fires a Santoryu Kokoba. Madara Gari! Rob Lucci freezes, stunned by the sheer force. It's like Zoro turned into a demigod overnight. He slices Lucci up like he's making an exotic jaguar coat. Even Jinbei's jaw drops at all that raw power. He had no idea there was a demon king in the crew. Meanwhile, Luffy's inside Jupiter's stomach, almost getting swallowed whole. He stretches his arm out, the jaws almost closing, nearly stuck, but the monster gulped down his backside super fast, and he wriggles free. He yells at the worm monster that it tastes terrible, but just as he thinks maybe it might taste okay, Saturn grabs him and spins him like a hula hoop. Now he's getting revenge for what the kid did to him and Kizaru, slamming Luffy into Pumbaa's attack. Luffy gets dizzy and ends up back inside Jupiter's mouth. This old dude is way too hungry for Luffy. Seriously. Finally, help arrives. Dory and Brogy show up grinning, saying they saw a familiar face. They declare that a dark place doesn't suit this man and rush to help the Straw Hat. Dory blocks Saturn's swings and throws him back, while Brogy smashes Topman's face. They grab the horns of each of these horned dudes and slam them together, landing a double beefcake smack. Bro code is at an all-time high. The two giants rush in because Jupiter's the next target, using a sunsaw to decapitate the Gorosei and yank Luffy out by force. The kid pops out, cracking up, shocked to see the old giants. They say they couldn't just sit around and had to see the Straw Hat. Luffy's grinning so hard he's blushing. Now these three are about to wreck these half-baked Gorosei. Marcus Mars was flying across the island, radiating that monstrous haki. Jinbei shouted, "What the heck is that?" The beast was radiating pure rage, so they had to get out of there, fast. He went to grab Zoro, shouting, "It was time to go," but the swordsman wasn't having it. He said the fight wasn't over yet because the tiger was still alive and breathing. Problem was, he was barely standing and was spitting strawberry juice everywhere. Sanji asked if Jinbei had managed to get the mossy-haired guy out of the fight, but Rob Lucci was already ready for round two. The fishman grabbed Zoro, saying, "You already won." Lucci kept crawling forward, and Jinbei apologized for the chaos, then hit him with a water-powered karate strike so strong it sliced trees in half. Lucci even reverted back to human form, jaw dropping when he saw a giant flying chicken barreling straight at him. He asked the CP0 agent where York was. Zoro couldn't even process the size of this monster. Lucci reported York was trapped in the control room on the 4th floor. The two escapees? That was Roronoa Zoro and Jinbei, the Sea Knight. Up above, 5 more Straw Hats and 2 Vegapunks were prepping to sneak out the back. There were also 85 Cypher Paul agents and 4 Seraphim trapped in the basement, and only 6 minutes before Vegapunk's broadcast. The beast approached, impressed, saying the agent was truly remarkable. No further questions. But as the Gorosei started leaving, Lucci spoke up, asking if his friend inside could be spared. The parrot replied that isolating one bug is impossible when you're about to wipe out the whole hive. Meanwhile, Luffy was yelling that it had been over 2 years since he'd seen the giants. The big guys barely recognized him in this form. They'd heard tales of this god of Elbaf and wanted to know where he got that Nika outfit. The kid had no clue. And they had bigger problems to deal with before having a chat. Saturn muttered that these giants were going to be a real problem. Dory noted the monsters looked just like those from Elbaf. Luffy said they didn't have time to fight. They had to escape, but the bearded guy told him to chill. Sanji had already explained everything. The message got through. The crew would regroup on the other side of the island. The giants said they came to help the Straw Hats after reading the papers, especially seeing them trapped by the Marines. The kid had no idea about this news. When he heard he'd gotten villain fame for kidnapping Vegapunk, he laughed his head off. Time to get back to the ship. Dory sounded a giant trumpet that echoed across the island, so powerful even the ships were shaking. Olmo reported that the bosses had spotted the Straw Hats, ordering everyone back to the ship. The other giants laughed at the Marines. They were only there to save the Straw Hats anyway, since there was no treasure to plunder on these ships. Topman noticed the escape signal and said he wouldn't let it slide, and decided to play a little tune for them. He inhaled so hard through his nose, it felt like he sucked all the oxygen out of the room, then let out a terrifying scream packed with haki. Luffy was dodging like crazy, but buildings started exploding and catching fire. The Marines were in shock. Those black lightning strikes were back. The King's haki was so absurd. Even the weaklings fainted 2 kilometers away. Even the giants had to hold themselves back or risk flying away. Luffy was laughing midair, his body starting to fall apart like Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story. The giants were stunned, and Dory planted his sword to hold Luffy together. This was just plain bizarre. The kid started sticking all the pieces back together like some kind of sticker album. Brogy asks if he's okay because he looked like a jigsaw puzzle, but he says he's all good, and Dory cracks up, saying his body is just plain ridiculous. Still, that King's haki roar was dangerous. The boar starts scraping its hooves on the ground, calling them bugs. The Elbaf warriors ask who this pig is, and the Straw Hat explains it's a big-shot government guy. Top Man spins like a Beyblade, screaming he's gonna wipe them out. He turns his horns into blades, but Dory and Brogy block the strikes with Svalin's solar shield. The Gorosei ask if they even realize the mess they're making. The duo just shrugs. They're protecting their buddy. Then they launch that pork ball to infinity and beyond to roast some enemies later. But Saturn scoffs, calling them a bunch of bugs. If they're friends of the Straw Hats, they'll get exterminated too. He launches a rain of grape juice, and Luffy screams to watch out. It's poison. The kid's so hungry he bites into into a tree and turns it into a baseball bat. He grabs a bucket of paint from the portal of imagination and shines it up. He puts on a helmet, swings like a pro, and sends every ball right back to the owner. They charge at the Gorosei, and Luffy's jaw drops as everything explodes. The Elbaf crew shouts that the flames block the forest. Perfect chance to bolt. But they have to hurry because these guys are basically immortal. The giants admit they've never heard of a race or skill that's immortal. Yet the beasts keep rising from the ashes like phoenixes. The three goofballs march, singing and celebrating their escape. Meanwhile, God Usopp leads a team to pull the grounded ship free. Robin's napping while Nami yells at Jinbei and Zoro to hurry. Their boots are failing, so running it out by brute force is easier. The beaver giant and the others are nearly at the ship, but three vice admirals are waiting to beat them down. The Hornhead says he won't let Bonnie escape. Sanji hears a weird noise somewhere. Back at the broadcast, Shaka warns Stella to drink the coffee. Time's running out, but it's so hot, he keeps burning his tongue. York watches the chaos, screaming to get her shackles off. Even Kaku says she's too loud, and Stussy tells her to zip it. She stops shouting just as Marcus Mars lands right on top of them. He asks where the room broadcasting the video is, but York nearly has a meltdown dealing with that talking parrot. On the marine ship, Kizaru's still down. Doctors ask where he's hurt to patch him up. He says it's a deep wound, but all he needs is rest. Meanwhile, in the flames, the legendary robot Emeth rises for the first time in 200 years, calling the name Joy Boy. He rips a giant stake from his chest, and somehow this robot is bleeding. The Marines shout that the Elbaf ship can't leave, but they freeze when the ground starts shaking. They look up and see a Megazord stomping around like nothing happened. The battalions report that on Egghead's northwest coast, something way bigger than the giants appeared, and fire doesn't even faze it. It crushes everything in its path, and even apologizes to Joy Boy for some reason. Baldy Nashuro was slicing through Pacifistas non-stop, chopping those giant robots like a hibachi chef on steroids. The Marines saw their chance to get back to Egghead. After all, they couldn't let Emperor Straw Hat Luffy slip away. Nashuro could not believe Vegapunk gave a 12-year-old kid the power to nuke an entire country. The giants were heading back to their ship, and the Marines wanted to sink it before they could escape. Vice Admirals stood in their way, and Frankie yelled if they were that desperate for attention. Red King, that cone-headed dude, cranked his power to the max, screaming that no one was getting through. Frankie's giant robot rolled up like, "Move or get mowed down!" They squared off like two dudes about to kiss, but changed their minds and threw punches instead. And the Vice Admiral got absolutely humbled by Frankie. He talked big, but ended up eating pavement. Pomsky charged at Bonnie, yelling that she was not taking those weapons. So she told a giant to look after her dad. The Marine fired at her midair, but Bonnie dodged using her jet boots and told that clown not to call her dad a weapon. She slapped his face and turned the mustached man into a snot-nosed brat. Then she kicked his teeth in and kept pounding him just to vent her rage. Atlas came flying in hot and blasted guillotine with a massive, ultra-mighty punch. The guy didn't even have time to blink. Bonnie shouted that the Straw Hats still hadn't arrived, so they needed to get off this island fast. The Vice Admirals got back up, screaming again that they would never let them escape, because failing meant losing their heads. Meanwhile, up in the Leba phase, York was losing her mind. She was chained up while a giant parrot monster stared her down. She begged him not to eat her because she doesn't even taste good. Debatable. Marcus Mars unleashed his hockey, shattering York's chains, and demanded to know where the broadcast room was. She should know. After all, she is a Vegapunk. York could not believe this creature was one of the five elders, but before she could finish her sentence, he started snacking on her. Back in the broadcast room, Shaka asked if the old man was not going to drink his Vega coffee, but Vegapunk snapped that it was too hot. Pythagoras joked that they all knew the geezer could not handle hot drinks. Only 4 minutes left until the big reveal. York led the giant bird to the room where the video was recorded. He asked if she was sure, then dropped a nuclear-sized bomb that blew the whole place to dust. York screamed that he was insane. Blowing it up would not change anything. The broadcast was still rolling because obviously the real transmission device wasn't there. York told him exactly that. If she were Stella, she would never hide the Den Mushi in the same room where they filmed. The Gorosei just said fine. Then he would blow up the entire lab. York panicked, explaining that would make things worse. The second floor was full of weapon prototypes, and the first floor powered the whole facility. Not to mention the gas tanks. If they blew, Punk Records would go with them. So the parrot freak told her to start thinking, since her brain worked like Vegapunk's anyway. York shouted that she wanted to stop the transmission too, because if they kept committing crimes, it would ruin her dream of becoming a celestial dragon. Then suddenly, the bird monster heard the voice of someone insignificant, and York realized it might be the transmission snail itself. He said it looked like a tiny spiral shell with a pretty suspicious shape. Then the Gorosei told York to take him straight to that Den Den Mushi, and she gave him a grin so sneaky it could sell stolen candy to kids. The two of them flew off, and Stussy finally breathed in relief, then roasted Kaku, saying nobody even cared about him. The nosy pigeon boy asked what kind of monster that thing even was, and the blondie said it must be one of the 5 elders. Pinocchio laughed in her face, saying she got ditched even after betraying CP0, but she told him to chill. She chose to stay behind herself because someone had to complete the final mission. Kaku was totally lost, and even back on the Sunny, Nami could not believe they were just leaving Stussy behind. Edison explained that the barrier had to close the moment they escaped with the ship, and it could only be controlled from the control room. That is why Stussy volunteered to stay. Robin pointed out that thanks to her, they could break through the barrier, but they would not be able to fly nearly as far as the Vega Force would have carried them. Edison ran the numbers and said that, according to science, the ship was absolutely going to crash and burn. Nami almost had a heart attack, and Usopp shouted that the explosive cannon was ready. As soon as Zoro and Jinbe showed up, they could blast themselves toward the sea. But when Chopper explained that it still would not be enough to reach the ocean, the long-nosed freak froze in terror. The tin head started laughing, saying they were going to need a miracle, but he declared that he was a scientist, so he would make sure their ship landed safely on water. He blasted off, and Lilith chased after him, screaming for him not to do it. Edison shouted that this kind of damage was nothing, then slammed straight into the barrier and blew everything up. Lilith fell to her knees, crying her eyes out, unable to believe what she just saw. Out at sea, the Navy ships were almost flying through the air. The wind was so wild, it was dragging everything back toward the island. Mountains were crumbling, and some unlucky soldiers ended up inside the mouth of Jupiter. The massive worm was sucking in all the air, and even the giants of Elbaf were struggling not to get pulled in. Despite their strength, they could barely move. Poor Luffy was the first one getting dragged away, but right before he got slurped up for good, he used Brogy as a springboard and launched himself away from that living vacuum cleaner. He kicked so hard he split a whole building in half. Dory and Brogy stumbled back. He juiced himself up like he just took 2 doses of pre-workout, turned into a muscle monster the size of a bodybuilder, and leaped with a skyscraper on his back, yelling, "If that overgrown worm is so hungry, he can eat this rock instead." Then he hurled that massive chunk of debris straight into the Gorosei's ugly mouth. The Elbaf giants burst out laughing, saying Straw Hat just maxed out his aura level. But right after the throw, Luffy's energy ran out, and he shriveled up like a raisin mummy. The big bearded guys freaked out, asking why he suddenly turned into a skinny grandpa. Luffy shouted that he needed food, and Brogy handed him something called Hakarl, a dish so stinky it could clear a 5-mile radius. Even Luffy, who would probably eat a rock if it looked tasty, hesitated. That stuff was fermented shark, Elbaf's emergency rations straight from nightmare cuisine. The rubber monkey started eating it and immediately regretted every life choice that led him there. But suddenly, his energy shot back up, and he bulked up like he just downed a gallon of pre-workout. Out of nowhere, Topman came charging in to catch up with the crew, and the giants yelled for everyone to watch out for the boar. But Luffy roared that he was fully recharged now and jumped straight at Pumbaa. He activated Gear 3rd, packed with armament Haki, and launched a blazing red rock that could melt steel. The hit was so brutal, it left the boar dizzy, but that thick hide was tougher than expected, and Luffy was the one who got hurt. The crew used the chance to run while they still could. Meanwhile, on the ship, Lilith was sobbing her heart out over Edison. Then another explosion shook the area, and they heard a creepy spider crawling up the walls. Turns out Saturn got tired of getting smacked around by Luffy and decided to pick on the weak ones to feel strong again. Down below, the vice admirals were completely wrecked, and the crew was about to board the Elbaf ship when disaster struck. One coward sliced the giant from behind. Everyone froze in shock. It was none other than bald-headed Nusjuro in his hybrid form, eyes glowing red and ready to massacre every pirate in sight. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars finally reached the secret room. Only 1 minute remained before Vegapunk's big truth reveal, and the Gorosei walked in calm as ever, like time itself was on his side. That smug old man had found a transmission snail on the floor and told Vegapunk his luck had just run out. At last, Vegapunk's grand broadcast begins, the truth that will shatter the world. Marcus Mars stood right in front of Punk Records, the biggest brain on the planet, still running even after Vegapunk kicked the bucket. And if you thought old Applehead's noggin was already huge, wait till you see the size of that floating balloon brain taking up the skyline. The old man says he'll keep the transmission going, but he's worried if people will believe what he's about to say, because once they hear it, there's no turning back. Over in Syrup Village, Usopp's pirate crew was panicking. If even Kaya, the rich girl, didn't have a video snail, what chance did a bunch of broke wannabe pirates have? Mary said those video snails were massive anyway, but hey, at least they could still hear Vegapunk's voice. And Kaya, she's clearly saving herself for Usopp when he finally comes home. Lucky man. Kaya said Dr. Vegapunk revolutionized medicine with his research. On a marine ship, the operators reported that the real broadcast was about to start. Even at Twin Cape Lighthouse, Laboon popped up to listen in, while Crocus prayed Vegapunk wouldn't spill the beans he feared he would. Back in Vegapunk's hometown, everyone was watching proudly. An old man called him the pride of Baltimore, while a kid asked if Vegapunk caused the island's disaster, but that one was definitely Frankie's fault. Far away in the Bird Kingdom, where Chopper once studied medicine, the locals realized the transmission was coming from the same island as their little raccoon doctor. They joked that Vegapunk had built more weapons than Tony Stark on a bender. Meanwhile, over at Hachinosu, pirates were torn between fighting or tuning in to the breaking news. Back on Egghead, Marcus Mars stomped down to crush the transmission snail, but the fool fell for the oldest trick in the book. It was just a decoy. The real snail was hidden somewhere else. The Gorosei were foaming at the mouth in fury, shocked that they'd been duped so easily. And even with a brain that size, Vegapunk's Alzheimer kicked in. He started introducing himself all over again. The other elders ordered Marcus Mars to shut down the transmission, but he admitted he'd been tricked and needed more time. The show had officially begun, and the long-armed tribe folks were cheering like it was the Super Bowl. The bird elder muttered that the big-headed scientist had over-prepared because the video was running on auto and couldn't be stopped. York revealed that Vegapunk was continuing the work of the Ohara scholars, and the 5 elders turned whiter than a ghost in a snowstorm. This wasn't just a message, it was the sequel to Professor Clover's final words. Meanwhile, Sanji was sprinting faster than a man late on rent. When he heard Bonnie screaming for help, his love instinct kicked in full throttle. When he got there, he saw a massive bald horse freak raising a sword over her. The old man shouted that Bonnie would never steal their military power and swung to slice her in half. But Sanji went turbo mode, yelling that Bonnie only had eyes for him. And after this arc, the FBI might have something to say about that. He flipped through the air and landed a blazing kick right on Nusturo's chin, sending blood flying everywhere. Then he mocked him, saying the Straw Hats weren't going to go easy just because he was an old-timer with back problems. But Nusturo caught fire, transforming into a demonic skeletal horse straight out of a nightmare. The monster bit down on Sanji, knocking Vegapunk's body off the edge, but Atlas dove in and caught him at the last second. Not that it mattered much. The old man was already one step away from becoming a memory. Frankie tried to land a massive right hook, but the horse-faced geezer blocked him, ready to stomp them like roaches. That's when Kashi and Oimo noticed their buddy Soja King's crew was in trouble and jumped in like nightclub bouncers, grabbing the elder by both arms. Sanji broke free but fell headfirst straight into the ground. If he were a regular human, that would have been instant hospital time, but since he's built like a cyborg Ken doll, the worst he'll get is a stiff neck tomorrow. Bonnie activated her distorted future and grew as big as King Kong on steroids. She was towering over the actual giants now. This girl could use the elder as a welcome mat. She leaped to crush him, and his face looked like someone just hit him with a +4 card in Uno. Meanwhile, during the broadcast, Vegapunk admitted he had committed 2 unforgivable sins and could be arrested or killed any second. So he programmed the video to start the moment his heart stopped beating. Everyone froze, realizing the old man was already 6 feet under. People in Sabati started bawling, and even Caesar and Sanji's deadbeat dad freaked out. Their lifelong dream was to surpass Vegapunk's genius. Meanwhile, that gossip vulture Morgans was losing his mind because Vegapunk had just dropped the headline of the century, ruining his scoop. Before his message began, Vegapunk told everyone not to judge whoever ended his life, even if they looked like the devil himself, because what he was about to reveal would melt their brains. Up on Egghead, the Straw Hats came face to face with Saturn. The crew froze, asking if anyone had enough bug spray to take down that giant spider. Though let's be real, they'd need a whole factory to even tickle that thing. The monster told them to move aside since he had no time for insignificant insects. But Robin froze the second she heard his voice. It was the same one she remembered from the hell of Ohara, the voice of one of the 5 elders. The old man recognized her too, calling her the foolish girl that Akainu failed to kill. Nami demanded to know what that demon was talking about, but as Saturn's tentacles lashed out, she screamed for everyone to protect Robin at all costs. Brook froze and snapped one of his own legs. Usopp blew another up, and Chopper went full tank mode to shield Robin while Nami pulled her out at the last second. Even Zeus got the message. Everyone went all in against that demonic spider. Meanwhile, Marcus Mars was shaking with rage trying to locate the broadcast's signal, but there was so much life on the island that he could not track it down. York was freaking out like an unpaid intern afraid of losing her big shot at becoming a celestial dragon. Vegapunk kept speaking, saying that what he was about to reveal might sound insane, but humanity deserved to know the truth. The Gorosei held a Discord call, and Marcus Mars suggested blowing up the entire power plant to stop the broadcast, but Saturn called it a terrible idea. He said he did not care if every Marine soldier got wiped out, but if they blew up the lab, they'd never be able to recreate the Mother Flame, the weapon Imu-sama wanted so badly. Then came the moment that silenced the entire planet. With eerie calm, Vegapunk declared that the entire world was going to sink into the ocean. The Marines were frozen in disbelief. The fishmen and mermaids were celebrating because it meant it was finally their turn to inherit the Earth. And the Gorosei were losing their minds, screaming Vegapunk's name. So yeah, my friend, anyone with a devil fruit better start shopping for floaties, because when this ship goes down, swimming is not an option. And now it makes perfect sense why the celestial dragons live up in the sky. They'll be the only ones still dry when the rest of the world goes under. At Marine HQ, the soldiers were losing their minds, asking how in the world the planet could possibly sink. Everyone thought Vegapunk had finally gone senile, and Akainu looked ready to punch a hole through the wall. Meanwhile, in Mocktown, the locals were cracking up, saying the old man should quit science and try stand-up comedy. They said he was just using his death as an excuse to mess with the whole world's head. I mean, a planet swallowed by the sea? That's a tough sell, even for a mad genius. Over at Fishman Island, everyone was terrified, and Shirahoshi worried about what would happen to Luffy and the crew. The Marines weren't sure if Vegapunk's message was true, but one thing was certain: the man had thrown the world into chaos, while York ran around like a maniac, terrified that Stella was actually revealing everything. Vegapunk's voice echoed through the transmission, saying that if his calculations were correct, a massive earthquake would soon shake the entire world. People started freaking out, because that exact quake had just happened, exactly as Vegapunk predicted weeks before his death. He said the sea level would rise by 1 full meter across the globe, making some islands completely uninhabitable. He warned that folks could ignore him if they wanted, but this disaster wasn't natural. It was man-made, a deliberate act by none other than the world government. That's when Saturn went berserk, smashing everything in sight. Nami called Zeus, and he blasted a thunderbolt right into that wrinkled demon's head. Brook followed up with a morning serenade, freezing Saturn's brain like he'd just chugged a bucket of ice cream. Lilith fired her bubble blaster, and Usopp launched a bean straight at his face. Not that it mattered, because it barely scratched the guy. He swung back with those creepy claws, ready to shred everyone. Chopper tried to shield the crew in his defense form, but even that wasn't enough. The monster called them worthless insects and flexed like he'd just taken 3 doses of gym juice. He stomped the ground so hard it sent everyone flying, but Robin was quick and created a net of hands to catch the crew just in time. Saturn ordered them to get out of his way and charge straight through Chopper, trampling him like a bug. He nearly crushed Nami and the others too, but decided to keep going. Because now, stopping that transmission was far more important than dealing with a bunch of nobodies. He asked Mars if he'd checked the power plant yet, and said he was heading there himself. That lab had to be protected no matter what. Vegapunk said that wishing for peace was his very first sin. He once dreamed of creating infinite energy to bring progress to the world. Meanwhile, Saturn stormed into the power plant and came face to face with the Mother Flame, a weapon so powerful it could erase an entire country with a single blast. He even dropped his monster form to take a closer look, and when he spotted a Denden Mushi, the first thing he did was smash it like an angry boomer seeing TikTok for the first time. But of course, the transmission kept going, and the Elder lost his cool. Marcus Mars went berserk, tearing apart everything alive in the lab. Out at sea, Marine ships kept firing at the giant robot Emeth, but nothing they did could bring that beast down. Luffy, meanwhile, was spinning around like a malfunctioning Beyblade, completely dizzy. The giants yelled at him to quit fooling around before he roasted himself alive. Vegapunk continued, saying his second great sin was tied to a mysterious century, the one that existed between 900 and 800 years ago. He explained there's a massive gap in history during that time. Imu-sama started sweating harder than a sinner in church when he heard that part. The Celestial Dragons ordered the Marines to shut down the broadcast immediately. Vegapunk was about to expose the truth of the Void Century. The nobles screamed that a simple death sentence was not enough for him. They wanted him to suffer. Vegapunk calmly said that the only way to uncover the truth of the Void Century was by deciphering the ancient poneglyphs scattered across the world. Giant Saul laughed proudly, saying the world was finally about to learn the truth. In Orangetown, a little girl said that long, long ago, 20 kings united to create the world as it is today. But Vegapunk questioned if that story was really true. He explained that deciphering poneglyphs is strictly forbidden by the world government, but even as a government scientist, he chose to risk everything to pursue that knowledge. Back on Egghead, the Straw Hats were relieved that Monster Saturn had left. Lilith guessed he must be terrified of Stella's broadcast. Robin was stunned to hear that Vegapunk had deciphered multiple poneglyphs using the books salvaged from Ohara, and the old man said he never once regretted it. In the lab, Edison was barely hanging on, all beat up but still turning a crank, mumbling that he was almost there. Vegapunk continued, saying that everything he discovered was only a fragment of the true history, and it would be wrong to fill in the blanks with mere speculation. So he would only reveal what he was absolutely sure of. Then Vegapunk revealed the centerpiece of his story, the man who lived 900 years ago, a warrior with a body that could stretch like rubber, much like Nika, the sun god of Elbaf mythology. And and that man's name was none other than Joy Boy. Luffy lands a massive punch right in the boar's ugly face, but ends up burning his hand again, and the giants are laughing their heads off. Vegapunk's voice echoes, Joy Boy was the very first man on the seas ever to be called a pirate. Over in Wano, the samurai were tuned in to the broadcast. Kinnaman was shocked that their country could even receive a signal from the outside world. Turns out it was thanks to a Den Mushi they swiped from Orochi. Everyone there said they wanted to see Luffy again. The man's such a legend, they even raised the Straw Hat flag over the capital. At G4 prison, Killer asked if this Joy Boy guy was stronger than Captain Kidd. Kidd puffed his chest and said, "Of course not. Relax though. That was just that chubby faker who pretended to be Luffy back in Sabati. Some folks really make a living pretending to be other people, huh?" The round dude bragged that he could definitely beat this so-called Joy Ball. Vegapunk went on, saying the poneglyphs he studied mentioned a great war long ago, a war where Joy Boy fought against what is now the world government, and Marcus Mars was still tearing the lab apart trying to find that transmitter no matter what it took. Vegapunk said Joy Boy's crew was so powerful, it forced the entire world government to unite, but no one knows what caused the war. Vegapunk believed it was a clash of ideals, not good versus evil. He revealed that Joy Boy came from a civilization so advanced it would make even today's science look like cave painting. Carrot asked if Joy Boy had any connection to Zunisha, the giant elephant. Vegapunk explained that the weapons from that era were beyond anything human hands should have been able to build. Foxy refused to believe a word of it, but the long-nosed blonde just said, "Whatever, I'm starving." Vegapunk said even a genius like him couldn't replicate those ancient weapons, and that was the real problem. Back on Egghead, Brook was calling for Jinbe and Zoro. They needed to find a way off the island fast. Then Nami freaked out because suddenly the clouds started moving. Brook guessed that this must have been Edison's final plan, adjusting the island's descent so they'd crash into the sea instead of splattering on the ground. Lilith was still panicking about that tin can Edison, but he just told the Straw Hats to run no matter what. He said they must not let the world government capture them, no matter the cost. Stussy got a call from Edison, who sounded like a dying toaster, telling her to drop the barrier and get out of there. But she said she was not leaving until the Straw Hats were safe. Tinhead told her the barrier was useless anyway. It could not stop the monsters storming the island, so the same shield that was supposed to protect them was now trapping them like rats. Meanwhile, Saturn and Marcus Mars were walking through the lab, frying every Den Mushi in sight with Conqueror's Haki. Edison said he had done everything he could to help the Straw Hats escape. The rest was up to them. Stussy was relieved, saying Stella would hate her if they failed, but Edison told her Stella would never hate her and ordered her to run. Still, the girl was lost like an ex after a breakup, saying she did not know who to live for without Stella. Outside, Jinbe apologized for being late, but Zoro told him to man up because everyone was in a rush. Nami overheard that and said she was going to beat him up herself. She screamed for them to hurry because marine ships were already surrounding them. She did not want to get blasted the second they hit the water. Down below, Atlas was devastated by Stella's death, but there was no time to cry. Too much needed to be done. Kashi and Oimo were wrestling with Baldi Nusjuro, and Sanji came flying in with a flaming concasse that could melt steel, but the old man blocked it mid-air like it was nothing. Sanji threw a couple more flaming kicks, but Nusjuro countered with a clean head smash that sent the cook flying like a broken drone. Kashi grabbed the horse by the tail to hold him still while Oimo and Bonnie charged to crush him, but Nusjuro blocked them both easily and launched them away like toys. Then he kicked Kashi and lunged at Bonnie, ready to slice her in half. Everyone froze, especially the simp of the century, but Frankie swooped in at the last second, saving her from becoming sushi. Nusjuro's blade only cut through the front of the giant ship, and Bonnie shrank back to her child form, completely drained. The warriors of Elbaf yelled that they could not lower their guard against that monster, but then he suddenly galloped away through the sky. Meanwhile, Vegapunk continued his message, revealing that the Void Century ended with Joy Boy's defeat. Nusjuro bolted off to shut down the broadcast once and for all. Vegapunk said Joy Boy's fall left behind damage so massive it could never be repaired. Nusjuro was furious, calling humans insolent vermin, and with one monstrous slash, he split Egghead Island right down the middle. Stussy fell on her back in shock, and everyone on the island watched as it broke apart before their eyes. The world government was losing its mind trying to stop the transmission. The island's floating base collapsed, sending everyone falling through the sky. The CP0 agents hit the ground like pancakes. Back on the broadcast, Vegapunk said what is obvious now was not so obvious back then. The world had already sunk once during the Void Century. What remains today are just fragments of the ancient continent. The revolutionaries were stunned. The world from 1,000 years ago was buried under the sea, and if the oceans keep rising, history might repeat itself soon. And of course, beauty runs in the family, because Nami's sister looked absolutely stunning while saying she had no time for this nonsense and went back to her tangerine farm. Vegapunk said that in just 100 years, sea levels rose by an incredible incredible 200 meters. The Marines were speechless. Their own warships were barely 60 meters tall. No wonder the world could be swallowed whole so easily. But the captain ordered his men not to listen to that criminal. In Mocktown, people were laughing so hard they were crying, saying Vegapunk's stories just got more insane by the minute. In the Sakura Kingdom, Chopper's hometown, King Dalton asked if it could really be true, while Dr. Kuraha laughed, saying she liked this young scientist. He sure knew how to drop a bombshell. Out in the desert, the former Baroque Works agents stood near a 200-meter mountain, realizing how many lives must have been lost if the seas really rose that high. Vegapunk said the logical answer would be a natural disaster, but he was convinced it was man-made. Morgans panicked, and Vivi had to shut him up to keep listening. Vegapunk explained he had studied every field: climatology, geology, meteorology, and more, and all the data proved it was impossible for sea levels to rise 200 meters in just 1 century naturally. Then, after predicting the next rise, he finally confirmed the cause. The ancient weapons that once sank the world 800 years ago still exist, just waiting to be reactivated. In other words, the Great War from the Void Century never actually ended. Imu-sama was fuming after that revelation, looking like he was about to turn the whole world into ashes. No one could believe a word of it. How could a war that no one even knew existed still be going on today? Inside Imu's creepy castle, he stood before a painting of a woman who looked suspiciously like Vivi. She was most likely Queen Nefertari D. Lily, one of the 20 monarchs from that lost century. Vegapunk apologized to everyone, saying they had the right to know the truth, while the curly-haired royal bawled his eyes out over Vivi's disappearance. Vegapunk explained that his dream was to create an endless source of energy that could push humanity forward. And though it was not perfect yet, the Mother Flame had just reached the point of stability where it could finally be used. It was a source of energy that could enrich lives around the globe, but a small fragment of it had been stolen. Back on Egghead, the Marines refused to enter the island to rescue the CP0 agents. The whole place was on fire. Stussy shouted that everything was shaking and asked what happened. Edison, barely keeping himself together, said the labosphere had collapsed, meaning he could no longer send the floating clouds to help the Straw Hats escape. He warned that another one of those bald old freaks was heading their way and begged Stussy to run for her life. She asked if she could at least release Kaku, since both he and Rob Lucci were about to take the blame for the failed mission. Edison apologized for forcing her to betray her comrades, but said she could do whatever she wanted as long as she promised to survive. The blonde cried her heart out, but still smiled through the tears. Vegapunk continued, explaining that 2 weeks after the Mother Flame was stolen, a blinding flash was seen over the kingdom of Lulusia, and soon after, the entire country vanished from the map. The girl who had escaped from there could not believe it. Someone had really done that. Vegapunk said that as a scientist, he could confirm that only the Mother Flame could have generated such destructive power. At the World Council, the kings were clueless about Lulusia's destruction and rushed to verify it. Vegapunk confessed that the flame he had created had been used to awaken an ancient weapon. He had no idea who did it, but he admitted he was partly responsible for the deaths of thousands. He apologized for such a catastrophic mistake, because now the same man-made disaster that once sank the world could happen again at any time. In Wano, Momonosuke freaked out, yelling that Pluton might be activated, until Kinemon smacked him with a headbutt, telling him to watch his mouth. Vegapunk explained that there were once 3 ancient weapons, and Joy Boy had intended to pass them down to future generations. He asked why Joy Boy would do that. Did he want the world to sink again? Who was good and who was evil? He said someday those answers would be revealed. Sengoku even started choking from how fast he was eating in shock. Vegapunk added that once humanity uncovers that truth, the world might drown again. The Void Century remains full of mystery, but some people already learned the whole truth: the crew of the Pirate King himself. The Marines were in total shock, and Akainu was about to blow a fuse because Vegapunk would not shut up. Crocus looked uneasy. After all, he was one of the Roger pirates, and the people could not believe that such a dangerous secret had been in the hands of pirates all along. Meanwhile, York was panicking, confused about how Stella knew she was the traitor who stole the Mother Flame. The synchronization system was down, so he should not have known. She realized he must have figured it out using the data from Lulusia, and freaked out even more when she noticed the timeline did not add up. That meant he already knew what the world government was planning before it even happened. If that was true, why would he bother hiding the Den Mushi? Elsewhere on the island, Jupiter was hungry, and decided to slurp up all the CP0 agents like spaghetti. Then York contacted the Gorosei, saying she knew exactly where the transmitter was hidden: inside the Fabria Strata, protected by the iron giant Emeth, the same robot the Marines had been bombarding without leaving a scratch. Vegapunk wondered why those who learned the truth had vanished without telling anyone. At Shaki's bar, she said Rayleigh had not gotten that drunk in years. The old man muttered that Vegapunk was talking too much, ruining the fun for the new generation. He said they deserved to enjoy the thrill of discovery just like he he and Roger once did. Over in Hachinosu, the pirates were listening to Vegapunk's speech and immediately started losing their minds over all that talk about underwater treasure and sunken cities. One guy even started doing math like a madman, claiming there had to be gold 200 meters under the sea. His buddy instantly threw a bucket of cold water on him, saying not every ancient city is Shandora with gold lying around like loose change. Then another genius asked, what if we use a submarine? But they remembered they are broke. They can barely afford dinner, let alone a submarine. It would be easier to befriend a mermaid and ask her to go treasure hunting. Meanwhile, Mont Blanc Cricket had stars in his eye. The man decided he is diving again in search of the riches of the lost world. He spent years being called crazy for chasing Shandora. Now he can rub it in everyone's face. At the GS Marine Hospital, the Sword Squad was recovering from getting beat up in Hachinosu. While watching the broadcast, Helmeppo was already connecting the dots to the One Piece. And Hibari was so worried about Kobe she practically tried to heal him with kisses. Vice Admiral Kujaku returned saying the commander was getting better too, but X-Drake just wanted to be left alone. And Kobe said if Vegapunk was telling the truth, they were finished, so it was time for Sword to get moving again. On the broadcast, Vegapunk said he could not give more details because the rest was only his theory anyway. But everyone wanted to know what Roger found and never told a soul. The Straw Hats noticed the barrier had been disabled, meaning they could finally leave. Except several marine ships had already gathered exactly where they would land. Brook confirmed he had loaded the cola so the Sunny could blast its rocket fart into the sky. Nami asked where in the world Jinbei was, and it turned out he and Zoro were chasing the skeleton horse. Nami started cursing them, thinking they were running off the wrong way, but Jinbei yelled that the bald demon was headed straight toward the Sunny. When Nushiro raised his sword to slice the little ship in half, the squad froze. So Jinbei used some fishman jujitsu and launched Zoro like a missile straight at the beast. Zoro arrived swinging a Notoryu Rashomon, but the Gorosei blocked it. Their conqueror's haki was so strong, it was crackling like electricity. Nushiro realized the swordsman was using a Kitetsu, and the clash blasted them apart, with Jinbei catching Zoro like a baseball line drive. He shouted for the crew to fire up the Sunny and leave while they joined right behind. Down below, Bonnie yelled for Luffy to move faster while the Marines surrounded the giant ship. Vice Admiral Hound ordered them to blow the legendary vessel sky high. The signal was not working, so Sanji screamed for Luffy, and shockingly, the captain heard him and yelled back for them to set sail first because they were almost there. Dory and Brogy also ordered the warriors of Elbaf to raise the sails, getting ready to leave once and for all. The Marines tried to stop them by firing cannonballs everywhere, but they got smacked in the mouth by a giant arrow to remind them who they were dealing with. Even the pistols were huge, and what should have been simple gunshots turned into wrecking ball blasts. Vice Admiral Urban hyped his troops by yelling that those giants were nothing but dusty museum pieces. But those museum pieces were sending the young Marine rookies straight into panic mode. A horned lunatic jumped on top of their ships, hammering his axe down like he was redecorating with destruction, while the other giants were playing with the Marines like it was a battle between colossal titans and regular humans. The soldiers were shaking in their boots, but Bluegrass told them to toughen up because this was their moment to shine. She fired a laser that ripped a hole in the Elbaf ship like it was construction paper, and then Doll pulled up furious, saying the next hole would be right between their eyes. She charged her fists with armament haki and blasted Kashi with a rock and roll barrage. Now that is a real balanced fight. One moment Doll was throwing hands, and the next Kashi was getting folded. Seeing their Vice Admiral beating up a giant, the Marines got hyped and rushed in too. Meanwhile, Luffy realized Hakuna Matata had vanished. Since they were no longer being chased, they could return to the ship without trouble. The four horsemen of the apocalypse surrounded the Iron Giant that attacked Mary Joyce 200 years ago, and Vegapunk said he had one last message. But this one was only for those who carry the name D. The old geezers completely freaked out. Dragon just watched like always. Sabo thought about Ace and Luffy. Kobe thought about Luffy and Garp. Beepo thought about Law, and even Blackbeard stopped everything to listen to the drama. But right when Vegapunk was about to drop the bomb, Hakuna Matata slammed the Iron Giant with a headbutt so powerful it launched the robot upward like a volleyball. It knocked over the transmission Den Den Mushi, finally ending the whole circus. Nobody could believe he cut the broadcast at the best possible moment, and Emeth fell onto the Marine ships, blowing everything sky high. York sighed in relief because they pulled it off at the last second. The Marines started jumping into the ocean to avoid getting crushed by the giant robot, which began sinking deep into the sea, asking where Joy Boy was because he really wanted to see him. And the episode ends. Man, I cannot believe the broadcast stopped right at the most important part. The whole world froze because Vegapunk's broadcast died at the juiciest moment. No one knew if the signal dropped, the island blew up, or the scientist got whacked by Straw Hat Luffy. In Alabasta, people could not believe the world government would erase the greatest brain alive over that, but they already erased King Cobra, and now they are doing the same to Vegapunk. Leo believed every rumor and started thinking Luffy really iced the old man. Rebecca told him to stop being a cartoon sidekick because that is obvious. obviously fake. On Egghead, Marines were shaking after seeing the 5 Elders for the first time, especially in those demon forms that looked like nightmare cryptid. The geezers asked how many Vegapunks were still alive. York tapped into Punk records and said only Lilith on her floor and Atlas on the Giant's ship, so the Elders ordered those two erased immediately. All they needed was York feeding Punk record, and the death of Vegapunk would not slow them down. Meanwhile, in the lab, Kaku was furious with Stussy. He said he respected her as an agent, but to move aside because he would not stop Lucci when he came for her head. She ran off in tears. "Come here, I will give you a pity hug." Down below, Dory and Brogy celebrated like they won the World Cup because they finally reached the Giant's ship. Luffy landed with style, awed by the ship's size. Kashi had just eaten a beatdown from Dahl, and Luffy ran over to greet Kashi and Oimo and immediately asked for food because priorities. Meanwhile, Bonnie was living the meme with Dahl. Problem was, she turned into a kid along with wrinkly Bluegrass and that transformer giraffe of hers. Bonnie laughed at them, and the Vice Admiral ordered the squad to open fire. Sanji warned they had already set sail, and Nami confirmed they would slide down the clouds thanks to Edison's sacrifice, but they would need help to land. Of course, the Supreme Sim swore to protect Nami, Robin, and Lilith, even if everyone else had to swim. Usopp lost his mind because that list was all ladies, and Frankie only cared about the Sunny. Then, the real danger showed up. Marcus Mars tore through the sky ready to sink the crew. Meanwhile, Luffy had become best friends with the head chef and was eating the Giant's 10-day stock. He told the cook to keep it coming because he needed serious fuel. Mars fired a flaming Kamehameha, and the Giants raised shields to protect the insignificant humans. Easy there, bargain bin colossal titan. They barely blocked it, but the ship caught fire. Bonnie shouted to get Stella and Kuma out before they became barbecue. The Big Bird wound up another blast, this time to erase everything. But the drums of liberation started thundering, and Luffy yelled that he was finally full. Ships began bouncing, and Marines thought the ocean had started swallowing the world. But Luffy had turned the water itself into rubber, making everyone bowing like pinball. The question that will haunt science class: if the sea is rubber now, does Luffy bounce or sink? Dory and Brogy heard festival music in those drums and started dancing in the middle of the flames, because why not? Bonnie watched everything unfolding and could only remember her and her dad doing the Nika dance together. She nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw Luffy in that form again. He invited her to help knock those monsters down, but she said she could not do it. Then Luffy said he believed in her strength, and the girl got more motivated than Sanji when there was a woman within a 5-mile radius. So she activated Distorted Future and literally began turning into Nika herself. She yelled she was completely free, and Luffy cracked up shouting he knew she had it in her. Kuma just watched, chest full of dad pride. The two danced in the sky, laughing so hard they looked like they had chugged energy drinks mixed with jet fuel. The Marines froze harder than an old Windows XP trying to open Google Chrome. They could not believe there were two Nikas. The elders needed to act before things spiraled out of control. Emeth kept sinking into the sea, saying he had finally arrived. Luffy and Bonnie laughed like clowns who slept in the circus tent. Marines screamed that Straw Hat Luffy looked exactly like his wanted poster, and Marcus Mars called them fools because two Nikas were impossible. He said the second was just a trick of the age fruit. He charged up another terrifying blast, and Luffy came up with a 5-star genius plan. He said slicing or smashing would not work on the elders, so he turned into a rubber gas tank to take the full hit. Bonnie asked if he had chicken feathers for brains. The boys screamed for everyone to hit him with everything they had. Sanji and Frankie were ready to flatten their own captain, but Bonnie was horrified. Brogy shouted to stop the party and quit dancing, like he had not been twerking a minute ago. Luffy yelled for them to hurry because the pain was unreal. He grabbed Mars by the wings so he could not move. Sanji told Bonnie that the captain's orders were absolute and unleashed an insane Ifrit jumble. Frankie followed with a monster right hook. Then Bonnie charged a Nika punch and told Luffy not to regret it later. Their attacks slammed into his back, nearly knocking unconscious. Bonnie could not believe he was actually getting hurt, but he said of course he was, because those maniacs were using hockey instead of just nudging him for momentum. The two madmen told her to keep hitting him like she wanted to shatter every bone in his body. Bonnie's heart nearly leaped out her throat, but it was too late to back off. Rubber Monkey used all that force and sent the Elder flying to infinity, beyond, and straight toward Elon Musk's space program. Bonnie celebrated like she just won the lottery. It was finally time to escape. Luffy asked where the rest of the crew went, and Sanji said they must have already gone down. Atlas said something must have happened and blasted off like Superman to check, because York was tracking them and could be planning something. Then the Denden Mushi that fainted inside Emeth woke up hungover, and Vegapunk's broadcast resumed. But now he was rambling about inherited will, and no one understood anything because the most important part about the D was cut. Vivi was close to choking Morgans because he would not shut his beak. York said the mental waves were only cut temporarily, and to stop it forever, they had to destroy the transmitter. But how are they supposed to do that if Hakuna Matata threw the Iron Giant into the ocean and every elder has a devil fruit? Out at sea, Luffy looked up wide-eyed. He wished it was like cloudy with a chance of meatballs, but instead the sky rained chunks of the island, Cypherpole agents, and Seraphim. It was like trash fall from Gachiakuta. Everything dropped from above like someone flipped Egghead upside down. Luffy warned the giants that the eggplant-headed elder was spitting people out like Ash's Sceptile firing bullet seed. Then the giant sandworm started vacuuming everyone again, launching bodies into the sky. Even the colossal ship was getting dragged in, and poor Bonnie lost her strength. She snapped back into kid form and almost blew away, but Sanji caught her and instantly switched from flirt mode to protective big brother, absolutely horrified. Luffy was nearly pulled in too, so he turned Jew Peter's own pull against him. He puffed up a hockey-packed fist and smashed the worm's face with gusto. The giants roared, while the vice admirals had no idea what reality even was anymore. And as if two monsters were not enough, the raging boar came barreling back to wreck the Elbaf ship. They were totally doomed. Luffy was too far, Bonnie was out cold, and the giants were shaking like leaves. Then Luffy heard someone shout Joy Boy's name. Out of nowhere, the ships surged upward like a kraken erupted from the sea. The Iron Giant rose and delivered a colossal haymaker right into Warcurry's snout, hard enough to snap his horns. It remembered Joy Boy saying, "When the time comes, act." Everyone stood frozen, wondering where that Megazord came from. Luffy was losing his mind like the Joker after inhaling a phone charger and chugging hand sanitizer, because he was finally watching that monster robot go to work. 26 years ago, before Punk Hazard became Todoroki's bedroom made of fire and ice, Professor Clover begged Vegapunk to research the lost century with him. The moldy grandpa tells him to cut the nonsense because he works for the world government now. Touching that topic is basically signing your own funeral papers. But Salad Head insists and reveals his real name is Clue D. Clover. His older brother was murdered right in front of him just for carrying a single letter in his name. He had to lie to survive, saying that Kid was just some dude. Vegapunk turns his back, pretends he heard nothing, and refuses. Then the old reckless fool says he will bring the truth to the world even if he dies doing it. 4 years later, the government announces that O'Hara is getting a Buster call as a Christmas present, and that clown Caesar was hyped to watch the disaster live. After the call of destruction, even the world government scientists could not believe they slapped a wanted poster on an 8-year-old girl. Months later, Vegapunk goes to O'Hara's ruins and cries for them, saying you must be incredibly foolish to die for the truth of the world. Funny how that works. Back to the present, Vegapunk says that only the winners get to write history. The losers have their voices erased. Robin breaks down remembering that nightmare. On the ship, Zoro is getting pissed, yelling that they need to leave before Baldy Nusjuro comes back. But Lilith explains that if that geezer interferes, the ship will be sliced in half faster than a watermelon at a ninja show. Out of nowhere, Atlas comes flying in and punches Lilith right in the face. The crew is speechless, wondering if she lost her mind hitting her own sister. Sweetie, York is the other one, by the way. Down at the shore, Vice Admiral Hound's soldiers do not know if they are awake or trapped in a fever dream because they are staring at Timon and Pumbaa, a Megazord, a worm face freak, and a bunch of other abominations all in the same spot. Emeth calls Luffy Joy Boy and says he is happy to see him again. Luffy turns around like, who is this toaster talking to? The robot says he will fight by Luffy's side again because Joy Boy's enemies are his enemies too. The elders are losing their minds because that cursed robot will not stay dead, and Vegapunk's transmission refuses to shut up. The giants prepare to set sail, and Brogy asks if the big metal dude is on their side, but Luffy says he has no clue. The robot just keeps talking about protecting some Joy Boy guy. The giants are even more confused because the robot is clearly speaking, but they cannot hear a single word. Vegapunk says it is stupid to hear only one side of a war that happened 900 years ago. Jupiter gets ready to charge while Emeth raises his arm to fire, and the three stooges are hyped like they are about to watch King Kong vs. Godzilla live. The worm lunges, but the robot's Hadouken fizzles out because he is rustier than a car abandoned in the sea. Jupiter bites him so hard he almost swallows the robot whole. Saturn yells for the worm to shove it all down without choking. He uses the worm as a springboard and jumps straight toward the giant ship. The only thing on his mind is destroying Bonnie and Kuma. On the Sunny, they ask why Atlas attacked Lilith, but she just twists her sister's neck and begs the Straw Hats to take care of Lilith, because now she will do whatever it takes to make sure they get out alive. York is already celebrating because Lilith has been disconnected from Punk Records. Now only Atlas remains among the Vegapunks, but that airhead was tricked like a toddler with a fake cookie because Atlas only shut Lilith's ship off temporarily. Nami yells at Zoro to shove Lilith inside the ship because Nusjuro is charging at them like some deranged creep who just smelled free buffet. Zoro shouts at Brook to fire the galactic gas blast, and the skeleton gets to work. Right when Nusjuro is about to slice the ship clean in half, Atlas jumps in front of him and loses an arm, but she manages to open a path for the Sunny to take off. Everyone hangs on so they do not go flying away, but they are still wondering if they will even reach the ocean before turning into floor pizza. Nusjuro asks if she really wants to sacrifice herself herself for those insects, then slices her for real this time. But she smiles, looking like a crushed soda can, and says she left a goodbye present for this bald freak. She explodes mid-air just like Deidara, and the Straw Hats cannot believe their eyes. But that explosion gives the Sunny the extra boost it needed to reach the sea. Can we already say Atlas is the MVP of Egghead, or is it too early? The crew is sobbing while that Snake York celebrates being the last surviving Vegapunk. Meanwhile, Nusjuro is regenerating like Perospero after Pedro's sacrifice, and he says they still need to silence Stella, who will not shut up. Vegapunk explains that Gold D. Roger sailed the entire world and learned every hidden truth, and the prisoners in Impel Down ask why he called him Gold D. Roger instead of Gold Roger. Emeth manages to break free but loses his arm just like York. Any minute now, Shanks and Kid will show up so they can form the official No Arm Club. The robot says he is falling apart and has to use his special move. Then he tells Joy Boy he will finally use that power. On the giant ship, Saturn starts attacking Bonnie like a coward, but Dory and Bragi defend the girl. Luffy yells not to touch the claws because they are poisonous. But how do you dodge this freak throwing 50 punches per second? Luffy was about to attack again, but freezes when he sees Bonnie crying. She screams that she will kill that Saturn trash no matter what. The old scumbag tries to stab her but takes a punch from the rubber monkey instead. Now that is real observation hockey. Bonnie powers up again and says this is a future where she is completely free. Saturn panics seeing her in that form for the first time. She shouts that she is ending this scumbag's bloodline today. Luffy hypes her up like a UFC coach yelling about pizza for breakfast and dinner for a whole month if they win. Vegapunk explains that rare races have been hunted and exterminated for centuries because of these hidden truths. Races like Kuma and Whitebeard's Buccaneers, King's Lunarians, and even Pudding's Three-Eyed Tribe. All the giants cheer when they see the two warriors of liberation, but Saturn says she is just a cheap knockoff. Luffy dodges every attack in the air, and Bonnie uses the tentacles like surf ramps to gain momentum. She transforms into a gorilla and smashes him with a Thor hammer. The geezer tries to ambush her again, but Luffy is locked in with god-tier reflexes. The giants get hyped and join the Nikas. Bonnie screams, asking how that worthless worm dares to do that to her father, and explodes with rage. She says her dream was simply to live as a family with her dad and mom. She even thought it would be easier to die than be alone, but she chose to live because that is what would truly bring her parents happiness. They literally did everything to make sure she survived that nightmare. Bonnie rockets through the air, preparing a final terrifying punch. Though someone should tell her to work on those triceps because those arms are hanging on hope alone. Saturn calls them insolent insects and uses the giants as stepping stones, but when he reaches the top, he is greeted with Bonnie's liberation punch straight to the jaw. Luffy smacks away all the tentacles, leaving Saturn wide open. Then the old parasite tries to headbutt her, but the two of them beat that monster simultaneously, making that contaminated worm regret ever being born. They tear him apart like a dollar store puzzle and leave him with more holes than a block of Swiss cheese. At least now he can officially rename himself to St. J. Garcia Strainer. And Kuma smiles, seeing his daughter finally become truly free. Everyone was shocked seeing the Sunny flying so high it almost high-fived the sun. Inside the ship, the Straw Hats were panicking hard, thinking they were about to belly flop into the ocean and meet the afterlife. That unhinged Nusjuro was galloping at full speed, and Zoro was already itching to slice something in half. Vegapunk says maybe Roger really planned all of this. And then the Pirate King gave that legendary speech everyone knows. Riches, fame, and power. If you want all of that, just let me bang you. Over in Hachinosu, pirates were losing their minds, hearing the old man talk about the One Piece. On the Red Hair Pirates ship, even Shanks was drinking heavy, unable to believe Vegapunk was dropping all these bombs. At the Cross Guild base, Buggy's goons were celebrating, screaming that their captain would be the first one to find the One Piece. At Marine headquarters, soldiers were saying they needed to find the treasure before the pirates did. But Akainu snaps at those idiots, asking who is going to protect civilians if they all start playing treasure hunt, as if that walking volcano ever cared about innocent people. Vegapunk finishes by saying the power of the world will fall into the hands of whoever finds the One Piece. That line made the entire world nervous, because that basically means pirates could end up running everything. People start begging the Marines to do something fast, while pirates are practically vibrating with joy. Even Whitebeard said it, and now the greatest scientist alive confirmed the One Piece is real. Impel Down turned into pure chaos. Guards were sweating bullets, fully armed, with prisoners locked up, and still could not stop the broadcast. Even inside the prison, the transmission kept playing. Kobe remembers the day he met Luffy, when he said he would become the king of the pirates. And now this delusional hero says he will do everything he can to stop that dream from becoming reality. He learned one strong, honest impact, and already forgot that one flick from Luffy would fold him like laundry. Meanwhile, Buggy's fangirls were screaming about how excited they were to see the world he would create after finding the One Piece. But the clown tells them to stop being dumb because he does not want that. Actually, they are all going to rule rule the world together. That instantly makes those fools fall in love with him even harder. Meanwhile, the red-nosed coward was shaking in fear, knowing Crocodile could slice him at any second. On Blackbeard's ship, Katarina Devon asks the captain what to do with Caribou. The bum orders them to bring the slime ball to him. If he does not meet expectations, Blackbeard will personally get rid of that worm. Back on Vegapunk's broadcast, the old man was about to say something extremely important about Joy Boy, but that cursed Timon and Pumbaa slam another horn attack and shut the transmission down for good. Finally, because it was basically 10-0 for the robot, the Denden Mushi explode, cutting the signal across the entire world. Emeth is left with a massive horn pierced straight through his chest. The giants scream in panic, and the Gorosei say they finally did it. Now they cannot let anyone leave that island alive. That freak Saturn regenerates even after being taken apart like a pile of toy bricks. And the bowling ball-headed Psycho was already coming back, ready to slice everyone up. But Nami screams at Zoro to do something, and he immediately jumps in to beat the Gorosei again. Even with half his head destroyed, the monster keeps moving like nothing happened. Luffy runs over to check if Emeth is still standing, and straight up apologizes for everything. He says he knows Joy Boy is long gone, but Luffy looks so much like him that it hit right in the feels. That giant worm was seconds away from swallowing the giant's ship whole, and Emeth apologizes for failing to make Joy Boy a king. He asks the name of that platinum-haired kid, and Luffy yells that his name is Monkey D. Luffy, and he is going to be the king of the pirates. The moment the robot hears that D, he lights up again. Before Top Man could crush him with that stomp, Emeth presses a button right on his right chest plate. He pulls a cord and unleashes a stored Conqueror haki that is absolutely unhinged. Marines start dropping instantly. He thanks Luffy for letting him hear that nostalgic heartbeat one more time. He says he is not letting Luffy die here. Then a second wave of haki hits, this time way stronger. It was so overwhelming that even the Vice Admirals could not stay conscious. York did not last 2 seconds and face planted like a sack of potatoes. Meanwhile, Sanji and Frankie were just chilling, watching that insane haki flex like it was a fireworks show. The Gorosei got completely humbled by Joy Boy's stored haki. They were forced out of their transformations and sent packing, ending up next to that mustached freak who had already taken a beating. They went back to Mariéjois barely standing. Even Imu froze just from feeling Joy Boy's haki from that far away. And next to him, there was a woman rushing over asking if he was alright. Anyone standing that close to the top ruler, seeing his face, has to be built different. The Sunny finally splashes into the ocean safely. Everyone starts crying in relief because they did not turn into canned sardines. Nami catches her breath and asks what happened to those monsters, but even Luffy does not understand how they just vanished. The giants ask how haki can make people disappear, already thinking the Gorosei got erased from existence. The Supreme Simp rushes over asking if Nami is alright, but the ones who really paid the price were Edison and Atlas, who sacrificed themselves for everyone. The only one left on Egghead was Saturn, since he was the only one who actually came to the island, and he was completely wrecked, barely able to stand. The giant robot was also about to shut down for good. He remembers his last conversation with Joy Boy, who sealed his strongest haki inside him. He told Emeth to only use it when the time was right, because Emeth would keep existing long after Joy Boy was gone. That haki was meant for moments when his life was in danger, or when he needed to protect someone. That way, even in the future, Joy Boy could still help him. Emeth smiles, happy that it feels like they are still together even after Joy Boy is gone. But Joy Boy tells him not to get emotional yet, because it will still take a long time before he dies. The robot says he will never feel alone again. He says goodbye to everyone and goes out in a glorious finale, becoming the final sacrifice so the crew can escape this Hell Island safely. Marine headquarters was desperately trying to contact the Egghead battalions, but good luck finding a single soldier still standing. The giants were celebrating like they just won the World Cup, and Luffy was beyond hyped with that monstrous Conqueror's haki, praising the giant robot like it was built different. Dory said he did not feel a single drop of hostility in that haki, and it actually felt even stronger than Shanks, since it was aimed only at enemies. On the Marine ship, Minnie Hancock was yelling at those sleepy Marines to wake up because the Straw Hats were about to dip, but she almost lost it when she heard Luffy shouting and thanking Emeth for saving everyone. And the crew, not being dumb, took advantage of the Marines being knocked out cold and got the hell out of Egghead. Now they were finally heading to Elbaf, the land of the giants. But out of nowhere, Luffy ran out of energy again and collapsed on the ground looking like a dried up mummy. Chopper freaked out when he saw the giants, while Usopp sprinted over to thank the legends for showing up. Meanwhile, Luffy was living the dream of 99% of the world's population, sleeping on Nami's lap. Jinbei put the pedal to the metal and sped up the ship, following the giants straight to Elbaf. Over in Morgan's flying balloon, he already had everyone grinding non-stop. After all those bombshell headlines, they were ready to print money. He ordered them to exaggerate every single word so the entire world would feel real fear, just enough to make everyone desperate to buy the next newspaper the moment it dropped. Vivi called him a rotten parasite, saying he should be giving giving people hope, just like Vegapunk did. So the big bird told her to stop whining unless she wanted him to leak her location to the government. Vivi fired back, calling him a giant man-child and saying only idiots like him would fall for those lies. Wapol had to calm her down, because at that rate, they would end up hiding under a bridge. But Morgans did not care at all. If the world was really going to sink, he would be king of the world since he lives in the sky. I just want to see what happens when that bargain bin balloon runs out of fuel and he has to dive down looking for a gas station underwater. Either way, he was already preparing the headlines about Yonko Blackbeard versus Trafalgar Law, Yonko Shanks versus Eustace Kid, and Yonko Monkey D. Luffy supposedly carrying Vegapunk's head back home. Back on Egghead, Sentomaru was escaping in a tiny boat. The angry volcano himself, Akainu, demanded to know if anyone was still listening, but only Kizaru was awake. Kizaru answered, saying everyone else was knocked out cold. That made Akainu snap, demanding to know what the hell was going on and whether Saint Saturn was even alive. He accused Borsalino of doing a half-baked job for letting all this happen, and honestly, he was not completely wrong. That shiny admiral had been playing both sides after all, bringing food to Luffy so he could recover and throw hands with Saturn. So yeah, can he really still be called loyal to the Navy? All Kizaru asked in return was whether Akainu had ever killed someone close to him. He remembered the day he first met Vegapunk, already roasting him the moment they met. He watched Egghead grow from the ground up. Together with Sentomaru, they helped build everything, and just hours ago, he had driven a blade of light straight through the chest of his best friend. Vegapunk said destroying Egghead was the same as pushing science back 100 years. He begged them to cancel the Buster Call, and the result was the city they spent their lives building reduced to rubble. That was when Kizaru finally snapped, yelling at Akainu to get his heavy butt out of that chair and see everything with his own eyes instead of doubting him from afar. Akainu froze and apologized. By then, it was already way too late. On the ship, Sanji was talking to what was left of Vegapunk. He said he did not really understand what the old man meant earlier and wanted to know if this was really the outcome he expected. Then we jump into a flashback from 2 weeks before the island turned into pure hell. Shaka detected something off in the power plant readings. The numbers looked altered, and the energy consumption was way higher than it should be. That could only mean one thing. Someone had stolen a portion of the Mother Flame, and that someone had to be a Vegapunk. The first person the old man suspected was Lilith, since only the three of them had solid alibis. It could have been any of the other four, but poor Lilith ended up taking most of the heat, so they had to find the culprit at all costs. After digging deeper, Pythagoras figured it out. It was York. She had planted fake memories inside Punk Records, the only one whose daily routine was eating, sleeping, and doing absolutely nothing useful. Shaka and Stella immediately apologized for doubting Lilith, and once they found one mistake, they started uncovering more and more. They even recovered a call York deleted, but forgot to remove from the trash. She had contacted Mariajoie, warning them that Vegapunk was researching the Void Century. That finally explained why Cypher Pole would not stop snooping around. 1 week later, the kingdom of Lulusia was completely erased, because York used the Sea Beast weapons to deliver the Mother Flame straight to the government. Vegapunk started blaming himself, realizing he never should have isolated greed from the human mind. That only made York think about one thing, wanting more and more. Even when she already had everything, it was never enough. So he ordered an evacuation ship to be prepared, not for them, but for the Egghead workers who had nothing to do with this mess. They would be hunted to the ends of the earth, so if death was inevitable, it would be on their own terms, because Egghead had resources Ohara did not have 22 years ago. This time, they could expose the full truth to the entire world. He apologized for dragging Shaka and Pythagoras into this, but they were Vegapunks too, and they were thinking the exact same thing. The next day, York showed up to check what Stella was doing. The old man was repairing the giant robot, since with Mother Flame energy, it could function again, and she had the nerve to cheer him on, acting like she was rooting for his success. The following day, the three of them recorded the message that would be broadcast to the entire world. After that, they hid the transmission Dendenmushi somewhere no one would ever think to look. Inside Emeth. The broadcast would only start once the old man's heart stopped beating. To make sure York would never discover the plan, they decided to erase all memories from those past weeks. But that meant they would also forget everything York had done. They would have to relive the nightmare all over again, figuring everything out from scratch. They activated the machine and wiped their memories completely. They woke up more lost than a GPS with no signal, and the old man found a letter written in his own handwriting. It explained that they erased 2 weeks of memories from all three of them, and that many surprises were waiting ahead. It revealed that the world government discovered their research on the Void Century and took what they believed were the best possible measures, so he told them to trust him and face death. The three of them were left in shock, unable to believe any of it. The next day, Emperor Straw Hat Luffy's crew arrived on the island, along with more than 300 marine warships, not to mention Admiral Admiral Kizaru and Saturn of the Gorosei. When they went to rescue Bonnie, Vegapunk told the Straw Hats to let him die because he felt something good would come from it, and he said he hoped it would be the Straw Hat crew who would find the One Piece. The Giants kept celebrating, and Usopp was over the moon knowing he was finally heading to Elbaf. Luffy was completely wiped out, running on empty, while little Bonnie was just happy to be reunited with her father. And now, all of them set sail together toward the land of the Giants. Zoro says it feels way too quiet, and even thought the banquet had been cancelled. After all, everyone stopped drinking after just one cup because Luffy was completely crushed over failing to save Vegapunk. But honestly, it was already a miracle they survived 5 Gorosei, an admiral, CP0, the Seraphim, and those 300 warships. The resident drunk says an Emperor of the Sea should not be this shaken over the death of an old man. Back on Egghead, agents were collecting the Seraphim and marine weapons when Rob Lucci and Kaku showed up claiming they killed Stussy. That alone made everyone start sweating bullets. On the ship, Saturn says they got everything they needed: York, Punk Records, and the power plant, meaning they can recreate the Mother Flame. The 9 Vice Admirals start apologizing for letting the Straw Hats and Bonnie escape. They say they are heading straight to Elbaf, but Saturn shuts that down, saying the biggest mistake was Vegapunk's livestream. He never imagined the source of the transmission was the giant robot that helped the pirates escape. And this old man really is ancient because 200 years ago, he was already hiding the Iron Giant so scientists could study it. For 200 years, Emeth did not move a single inch until he gave everything he had to protect Luffy. Vice Admiral Doberman asks if what Vegapunk said was really true and immediately gets hit with a dose of haki to wake him up. York wakes up inside the lab and panics when she sees all those island clouds. Then she realizes Edison is behind it, and with way too much confidence, she fires a nuclear-level blast that completely destroys the power plant. But by doing that, the genius shut down the clouds, meaning everything was about to collapse. So yeah, Punk Records, the thing they needed so badly, was done for. In Mary Joie, the Celestial Dragons were freaking out, asking if everything Vegapunk said was true. Even if it was, they figured it would not affect Mary Joie since they live close to the sky. But there would be no one left to bring them food, which means they are cooked. One walking meatball complains that he asked for grilled meat but got fish instead. Meanwhile, the poor chef was skin and bones, having not eaten anything for 3 days. When he said the food storage was empty, the lovely Celestial Dragon stabbed him with his punishment toy. The others complained that they even had to skip afternoon snacks because there was not enough food. They said this place felt more like a prison, so naturally their solution was to kill all the peasants who were not working hard enough. Yeah, great plan. Kill the people who make your food. Meanwhile, someone barges into the Gorosei chamber, and they ask what he wants. It was none other than St. Garling Figureland, also known as Shanks' father. He says he received orders to take control of Vegapunk York and assume the role of God of Science and Defense, meaning he is replacing a certain someone who is long overdue for a brutal beatdown. He says he is excited to work with them and make the world a better place. Back on Egghead, Saturn starts convulsing like his soul is being crushed in a vice. Black smoke pours out of him like a nightmare monster crawling out of his body. The Vice Admirals panic, saying they have to save the Gorosei at all costs. But the bastard keeps drying up, looking like he is doing a Brook cosplay. His eyes turn pitch black, and he suffers in the most satisfying way possible. Absolute eye candy. Imu asks why he let Joy Boy escape, and says this is his punishment for being incompetent. Tough luck, buddy. Not even that infinite regeneration you pull out of nowhere can save you this time. He gets reduced to ashes, and a massive burst of haki sends the Vice Admirals flying. They were shaking in fear, because they had never seen anything that terrifying in their lives, especially when they realized all that was left of the Gorosei were bones. Now the cosplay is complete. Too bad he would still lose first place to Nami in a bikini. Meanwhile, Edison still refused to quit. He was building a full-on abomination using parts from all the Vegapunks. That way, it was like they were all still alive. In the land of the three-legged women, Morley was screaming that he did not want to die, while Koala was writing down everything Vegapunk said during the broadcast about the world sinking and whoever finds the One Piece becoming king of the world. Sabo pointed out that the Celestial Dragons live in the highest place on the planet because they already knew this was coming. That is why 700 years ago, they forced countless people to build those structures. Dragon added that not everyone would want to solve this problem peacefully, and if this does not get handled soon, people will start killing each other over safe ground. Back on the ship, Lilith finally woke up. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and Sanji ran over instantly, acting like a loyal dog ready to embarrass himself. Out of nowhere, she started receiving signals from the Vegapunks. The Ultimate Simp explained they were in the Giants' Hall, which is why everything looked massive. He also said they sadly could not bring back any of the other Vegapunks besides her. Nami explained that Atlas was the one who knocked the girl out, but Lilith already knew everything since the satellites had informed her. She started crying so hard that even Usopp wondered if she was really the evil Vegapunk. That crying lasted about 3 seconds because she immediately started yelling that she was starving. Chopper pointed out that the giants left some enormous fruit there for them. Lilith realized she was that hungry because her brain was no longer connected to York's. Up on the table, Luffy was sitting there depressed, crying while eating, because he promised Vegapunk he would get him out of Egghead alive. Chopper said the captain was so sad that he barely had an appetite, only eating 5 bunches of giant grapes so far. But Lilith told everyone to relax, because the satellites only died in theory. In reality, they were all still alive and kicking. The entire Straw Hat crew almost had a collective meltdown hearing that. They thought the Vegapunks had turned into ghosts. Lilith told Luffy to cheer up because he actually did keep his promise. The old Applehead still lived on inside her. That sent the rubber monkey sprinting around like a maniac, even startling the giants. He ran off to thank the warriors of Elbaf because it was finally time for the banquet. Usopp was beyond excited to see the giants celebrating and went to grab Zoro and the others to stuff their faces. The giants' food was literally giant, a paradise for Luffy and Bonnie. And when they reach Elbaf, the food will be even better. Robin suddenly hugged Chopper so hard it looked like a bear attack, because once they reach Elbaf, she will finally get to see Saul again. The giants started debating who would find the One Piece and become king of the pirates. Luffy jumped right in, yelling that it was obviously going to be him. He grabbed a cup full of strong booze and leaped up, shouting that even if the giants became his enemies, everyone knew he would be king of the pirates. Everyone celebrated because they finally escaped that cursed island and were sailing straight toward Elbaf. Bonnie remembered everything her father went through one more time and said she knew he was the kindest and coolest person in the world. She remembered Kuma's promise that next time they would travel the seas together. When she looked up, she saw her father smiling, finally fulfilling that dream. Depression was officially over. Everyone was recovered and ready to fight 20 Gorosei at once if needed, but they had no idea that something far worse awaited them in Elbaf, the land of the giants. Meanwhile, a mysterious man was waiting for them in Elbaf. It was none other than Gaban, the right-hand man of Gol D. Roger. And just like that, this insane Egghead arc is finally over. I know you are already losing your mind waiting for the Elbaf episodes to finally drop, but while that does not happen, I will be bringing a ton of crazy animes like Jujutsu Kaisen and Frieren here on the channel, so smash that like button and subscribe so you do not miss a single video. And go watch the next video on your screen right now because it goes insanely hard. I'm out of here. Thanks and peace.